The character of our protagonist is this wizard named Caleb, and the moment he clicked to allocate 10 points into wisdom and start the game, the monitor flashed and everything disappeared. "Someone shake me, you criminal bastard. Wake up to life." The protagonist is confused. What is this guy talking about? Wait, I was just at home playing. Hold on. Did I lie down and fall asleep? He's laughing, having fun, thinking he's in a cool dream, while the guy tells him to stop annoying him on the ground. Then he walks away, saying, "Well, you're going to die like an idiot soon, so maybe madness is better." However, with his hand on his back, the protagonist is confused. This hurts like hell, considering it's a dream. And man, what is this crowd? And why is everything here so vivid? The mustached man then says, "Everyone here has already received their wands, and for those of you who committed crimes and became slaves, this labyrinth is your last chance to change your lives. If you survive and come out alive, you can escape slavery with the money you earn from the labyrinth. So give it your best, because it's the only chance to become students at the University of Magic." Our furry collared guy is scared. Hold on, Magic University? What's this labyrinth thing? And why do things here remind me a bit of that game? Before you can understand what's happening, they're already sending a group in, and we're inside the dungeon with the Fantastic Four. Looking around, it's obvious he has no idea what's going on. At least he knows his character is clearly the Caleb he created. And if this really is the labyrinth from that game, the creatures he'll encounter here are not easy to deal with. First, it would be good to take a look at the situation, understand his status and that of his friends. But looking back, the guy is all, "Everyone, don't worry. It's all right." The guy is in shock, screaming like crazy, saying they're all going to die. Caleb realizes he's clearly fallen in with a bunch of crazies. The guys are with their heads on the ground, hiding. He says, "Hey, guys, let's calm down for God's sake. For us to survive, right, we're going to have to find a way out." However, the chubby one has already run off desperately, asking for help, saying to get him out of there right now. Caleb, however, knows that the worst thing now is to draw the attention of the creatures around. But then, the sound of flesh being pierced, the chubby one turned into a pig on a spit. The goblin is there drooling with desire, while the other cries and raises his hands, saying everything happened exactly as he expected. The blonde elf is about to say something when the guy next to her takes a spear to the head. Man, the two wretches are there in the back staring, while she falls to the ground crying. Caleb notices that in a second, it's just the two of them, and the problem is that the goblins are coming their way. At this rate, he won't be able to handle it, and the creatures jump to strike him in the neck. The blade is about to hit his neck. He's sure he's going to die when it appears. The special hourglass ability, turn-based, activates. Time stops for 60 seconds for one turn, and he has 4 actions, automatically activating in emergencies. He's staring at this thing without understanding when the system says it's his turn, and time starts counting. Seeing the floating screen, he's not understanding what happened when suddenly he notices the goblins were frozen in midair. He's there. Wait, time stopped. What's this turn hourglass thing? The blonde isn't moving either, while Caleb notices that maybe this is his ability. Looking at where the blade stopped, he realizes the first thing he would have to do is raise the wand to block that attack that was going to hit his shoulder. Thinking about doing this, an action point is reduced. With only 3 left, he realizes it's going to be difficult to defend and shoot all at the same time. When he lets out a sigh, he wonders, right, if no one can move, why can he still sigh? He could still talk too, and the points, when he did this, didn't reduce. Then he remembers that in the game there was a screen with a sequence of actions and starts slowly coming up with a plan. He spends another action to move his body, another to defend while aiming at the goblin on the right, and then he reaches the last one, with 4 seconds left and all points used. He shouts, "Fireball." At the same time, the hourglass ends. He manages to defend the goblin's attack with a collar while using the wand to aim at the one on the left and the one on the right, creating a barrage, taking both to the side. The elf is there, not understanding, while the corridor was evaporated. Caleb is in shock. It was close that he didn't die, but what the hell happened? He doesn't want to die like those guys, who left without doing anything. He's not sure why this activated, but clearly, things were the same as in the game. And at least, no one understands more about the warlock class than he does. The bad thing now is how long it will take for them to find the exit. He takes a look at the body there, while thinking that the most important thing is to find new companions. Then a glance to the side and the blonde is shocked. The plate questions what kind of talent she has, and she explains it's a lightning thing, but she's never used it. He thinks it's better than her having nothing. Then he says, well, even if you've never used it, you have no choice. If a monster comes at you, don't hesitate and throw that thing. She says, oh, okay, kind of not knowing how. Then he tells them to go look for the exit gate, while thinking he doesn't know if it was a developer or some kind of god who threw him into this mess. However, he guarantees he will survive this labyrinth. The next chapter says that a few years ago, the labyrinth appeared, along with the portals, and monsters were dropped on Earth. Because of this, countless adventurers and wizards died. To combat them, people started being trained, and throwing slaves into these labyrinths is one of the solutions. At least that's what Caleb knows about the story. He has no idea if this is true, so it's good for him to be careful. The traumatized blonde there, who always has this scared face, then introduces herself as Urnil. He responds that he's Caleb, walks away, while she stays there wanting to chat, saying that Caleb is suddenly calm and quiet. On the transport ride there, he talks a lot with everyone. This surprises him, meaning there was with him before he took this body, which is very dangerous because they might end up discovering he's not the same person anymore. Urnil then tells him she lived in the fairy forest in what seemed like a mission shop, but it was a drug trafficking service. Unfortunately, they set her up, and without being able to pay for things, she became a slave. Caleb realizes she doesn't stop talking because she's scared, but soon turns, "Oh, Urnil, shut up, damn it." The poor thing got a fright, but actually, look at the little foot. She stepped on the trap. The hourglass activates, saying it's his turn, 59 seconds. He's thinking he stepped on the trap, but as far as I saw, it was her. At least he knows. He has to stay calm and keep an eye on the walls because that's usually where these traps come from. There's no kind of hole next to Urnil. He needed to look at his side too, so he spends an action point to turn his head. No hole either. Another action point to look at the ceiling and nothing. So, it can only be a floor trap. It must be those spikes that come up and give a painful stab in the foot. It could also be a nail bomb, which would be bad for both. They'd both be completely wrecked. My god, it could be a gas trap too. But what a damn beginner dungeon. And lastly, it could be the good old pitfall trap. However, he knows. When he looked down, he saw that Urnil was the one who activated it. This means that what will happen will affect both, and it can't be the spike in the foot. The problem is that there are 7, 6 seconds, 3. He realizes he doesn't have much way to escape all this. Then he uses the last action point to move his foot to the trap's foot too. Then the turn ends. Urnil stumbles like an idiot, gets all twisted there, half fallen, and turns asking why he did that. Caleb then warns, "Urnil, you stepped on the trap. Since it activates the moment I take my foot off, I stepped on it so it wouldn't activate." She's all twisted, but now what, right? Sorry, but what do we do? He asks if she remembers the orcs they killed and tells her to bring the little thing. She says okay and goes running. The goal was to put another type of object to hold the trap. Little girl, you're smart. Huh? I'm liking my boy. 200 IQ comes strong. Or not, actually, because 30 minutes later, no sign of Urnil, and he wonders if she stepped on another trap or encountered some kind of monster. Really, it would have been better if he had been more selfish and just run forward and let her die alone. But in the middle of the drama, someone comes calling from the end of the corridor, and it's her bringing a big barrel, saying it was too heavy. That's why she took so long. Caleb thanks her and tells her to put it where he is now. He then pulls out the wand when he's a bit away from the barrel and decides it's better to activate that trap to activate others nearby along with it. He moves the barrel, activating the explosion in the entire corridor, and with that, it's resolved. It was really the nail trap, and it went everywhere. Luckily, he managed to survive because of the hourglass. The place is dangerous, but he certainly has hopes. With the hourglass, he can always take the initiative. But first, he has to confirm if he can use this thing whenever he wants. Besides, he wants to make sure if he can cast spells using action points. Right at that moment, a little green foot appears in front. He says it's the perfect moment. One of the goblins is holding a bow, and he starts casting a fireball. Apparently, we're in the hourglass, because one action point is already gone. He's about to throw the fireball, while realizing that casting any kind of spell always costs an action point. Man, he spent 2 points, made 2 fireballs. The turn ended, and apparently 2, 3, 4, who knows how many. Poor goblin was shredded without being able to do anything. Isn't that something? Overpowered, the blonde is in shock while he realizes he can cast 4 fireballs before the enemies do anything. Urnil comments, "Caleb, you're a cheater. You have the ultra-fast casting, no animation, no cast, no circle, nothing." While she's a poor thing who can barely use the useless thunder. He doesn't care, just walks away, while she continues whining, apologizing for being filthy useless. Caleb looks at her thinking, well, an elf shouldn't be choosing either warrior or mage. Then he questions, "Oh, Urnil, how many meters can you jump?" She stops to think and says that in the forest, at least 4 meters. Man, that's a big jump. He already knows that 4 meters is at least 5 agility points. He then takes that goblin bow that died and makes the perfect paper, a blonde elf with a bow, as classic as a dwarf with a hammer. She's there pulling the string, saying she's already shot a few in the forest and maybe she feels more comfortable like that. The greedy one takes a look at the waist and says that from now on, she stays in the background while he's going to keep her wand. In the end, the bastard has 4 wands stolen from everyone, but she's happy there. But then, the pointy-eared one hears something and immediately warns that someone is following them. The protagonist turns around and at the end of the corridor doesn't notice anything. He's going to say there's no one, but she says she guarantees she heard something coming from that direction. Then he remembers something from the game, tells her to close her eyes and count how many stones are in front of him. She's kind of not understanding, but says okay. And with that, she concentrates and says there are at least 3 stones a step away. At that moment, Caleb is sure she has the sound map ability just like in the game, allowing her to locate things only through sound. It's kind of obvious. At that moment, he asks then how many people are coming, and she says 4, and they're running. Caleb already knows. Why are they running? It's not possible to know, but facing the whole team would be the worst thing, so it's them who are going to run too. They pass by the random pond and hide behind one of the pillars. The two are apprehensive, waiting while they hear the footsteps slowly approaching, when suddenly, Caleb jumps in front of everyone, pulls out the wand, and asks why they're following him. And the guy behind the shield already tells him to get out of the way and hand over the elf. Obviously, they're on top of the lake while they're telling him to do this. The guy points to the shield saying he received an item that isn't penetrated by any magic. Not even these arrows will do anything, so it's best he hands over this elf before they get into a fight and he ends up dying for her. They could even give the boy a chance to join the team and survive easily, by the facial expression. What he wants is more than obvious, right guys? A glass of water. The guy is thirsty. Come on, let him crouch there. Drink some water from the river. Poor Urnil is now in shock, thinking she's going to be sold. However, Caleb doesn't think it will be safer with these guys than with her. That's because, at least with Urnil, he can sleep in peace. Naughty. While with these bastards there, man, the risk is high. Oh, same story as surviving as a barbarian, remember? Oh, that one also had a blonde who's also well nourished. These cave elves apparently come buffed. Caleb is telling him to leave if they don't want to die, and Urnil smiles, seeing that she won't be betrayed, but the guy asks if he's really joking. The protagonist warns that he's serious and they're the ones who will end up dying. The bald guy changes expression and says they're out of options and already tells his friend to kill. Oops, but hold your horses, man. The boy's hourglass activated. The clock stops, and the protagonist says he clearly wanted to give a chance. He may look like an idiot holding his 2 wands, but they're the ones who made the mistake of stopping in front of him. With a lightning puddle under their feet, he can first use a thunder spell. If it were another situation, only one person would be the target, but since there are 3 in this water, the situation changes, and the first action point is spent. The lightning starts going, and at that moment, he already spends another, saying that the moment they're electrocuted, the shields will fall, and that's when each one will take the ball to the face. Another fireball cast, then one towards the bald guy. The last point is consumed. All his actions were used, his turn ended, and man, the poor guys blinked, and now there are 2 fireballs, a lightning bolt hitting everyone's boots, who agonize, the guy spits, the weapons fall to the ground. Before they can do anything, the big ball is already coming, exploding underneath 2, smoke rising. With that, he can't see another fireball, which is already coming through the middle of him too, hitting the middle of the face, exploding everyone. Ah, look at that genius protagonist. He raised the smoke because since she's an elf, even without seeing anything, she can aim and give a precise shot. Then he already tells her to keep up the barrage and take advantage of the smoke. His magic was still on cooldown, so he needs her to at least have taken 1 down. The bald guy took the fireball in the middle of the face, so at least he must have fallen. Time is passing. The guys there are agonizing, and the cooldown is at 2 seconds. Wow, it's not that short, huh? He tells her to keep shooting arrows, but then she says everyone is already dead. The protagonist is like, but you only shot 2 arrows, how did 3 guys die considering only 1 took a fireball? When the smoke clears, there's one with an arrow in the heart, and another she hit in the neck of one, went through and hit the middle of the throat of the other. Man, brutal girl, huh? Not only was she ruthless, but her aim is on point. The protagonist is in shock. It was a triple kill with 2 arrows, and he compliments her, saying she really is an elf. Then the bald guy coughs there and wakes up, realizing he doesn't have a hand anymore. Caleb finds it funny that he's alive, while the bald guy wants to know what the hell he is. How can someone cast so many spells without any enchantment? Why would the kind of talent he has exist in a place like this? I have to agree with the bald guy. Not that he's right and a good person, but he says, this damn world is very unfair. Really? He ran into the wizard who stops time and casts 4 abilities at once. Oh, the protagonist says, unfair. Don't do this to me, you bastard. You were the one who came here to get involved in this situation. The bald guy, crying, however, says it's not like people choose to be there. He was exiled and enslaved because he didn't have any magical talent. If he had half the talent the boy has, he wouldn't have to live like this. Life was a drag and he died. The bald guy isn't worthy of pity, but he has a point. Really, things are unfair here, guys. Then the hot arrow elf apologizes, still saying she tried to kill everyone, but that one, right, still stayed half alive. Stopping to think, the only one who stayed alive was the one who took the fireball, right? Hers. No one moved. He, however, is more curious to know if it's really the first time she's killed someone like that in a fight. This girl, she has a crazy Looney Tunes look, and I'm starting to think she might be dangerous in other areas. So, my boy Caleb, you better be careful. She says yes, it's the first time she's shot someone with an arrow, and the main character says it's also the first time he's used magic with the intent to kill someone, but it was to survive. He calms down and says they're going to check what those guys were carrying. But at the same time, he's trying to understand why he's so calm after killing 4 people. If this were the real world, he'd be freaking out, but he's strangely calm. At that moment, when the goblins came to attack, he was sure he was going to die and was much more scared. Somehow, in this short period, he's already mentally stronger. The undeniable thing was that the mix of burning flesh with the smell of blood was terrible. He's there observing with the back of his hand when Urnil brings a backpack and says they seem to have quite a bit of stuff. Looking inside, there's a little book, a pan, what looks like bread, a knife, rope, and even a letter from a human named Abyssin, a master of the labyrinth, or a woman, who knows. What they're sure of is that it's not anyone they faced. It's some other player who was abandoned and killed in this place. It's becoming clearer to him that dying in this labyrinth is easier than it seems. Not to mention that even those guys' group seems strangely organized. They had a good distribution, with the tank in front, the mage in the back, and if it weren't for Caleb's skills, there would be no way he could win. If the situation had been reversed, he wouldn't have been able to defeat these people. He would have died the same way. If it weren't for the hourglass, he'd already be dead, that's for sure. And relying solely on this power and luck is not how he wants to live the rest of his life. Wow, the boy's evolution is pretty fast, right? I thought he would just keep abusing the hourglass, which he probably will, but at least he's trying to become a bit more independent. He tells Urnil that it's time for them to come, knowing he needs an infallible strategy, the kind that doesn't depend on skills or any variable. After all, his life is the most valuable thing he possesses, and he's noticing that, clearly, this game doesn't seem like something he's going to wake up from. If this is his new reality, he has to do everything to survive. Elf, panting, we continue down the endless corridor. Wow, really endless. They've been traveling continuously for 12 hours. They face several goblins, so it's natural that she's tired. The second he offers to take a break, she immediately gets all excited and asks if they can finally stop for a bit. She lights a campfire, sits on the ground, and grabs a little piece of bread. Urnil calls out to Caleb and thanks him for saving her twice today. He responds that it was nothing much. She also worked hard. She replies that she knows, but he, for example, could have accepted those guys' offer, and it would have been easier. He gives a little swag smile and says, "I would never abandon a reliable companion like you." She gets all emotional, but he already lies down, saying goodbye, mentioning that he's going to rest first. At that moment, the system says he has entered a resting state and leveled up to level 3. He's obviously a bit confused, right? Wait a minute, you only level up in this game when you sleep? With that, he can distribute 2 more points. He has 10 plus 2 at this moment because of the equipment he's been receiving and the first points he spent. He remembers that in the game, with 13 wisdom, you can explode a goblin's shield, so he raises it to 12 with 2 more, making it 14. Besides, he could also take a look at Urnil's stats, who seems to have leveled up to level 3. He opens her profile and sees that she already has 8 agility. He can also check that she has the sound map, right, to be able to see without needing to see, just by sound. The protagonist then stands up, saying, "Well, as expected, I didn't return to reality." She's standing there all crooked, and he tells her she can go to sleep now. She throws herself down, thanking him while he puts the shield against the wall, and she asks what he's going to do now. He explains that it's just a small check. He pulls out the wand, fireball, shield explodes. Indeed, the power had increased, and the reality is that this doesn't seem to be a dream. Urnil says she's impressed that he exploded the shield but falls asleep. A long time passes, the campfire goes out, and they're back in the corridors. She wants to know how long it's going to take for them to find the exit. Unfortunately, they're finding several paths with 3 ways, which means it's now a matter of luck, but he's an unlucky person. The scene, however, advances a bit more, and he's scared. That's because it seems like they've found the exit, and there's a group of people in front. At that moment, he hesitates a bit and tells Urnil to stay back. Those guys had some pretty good equipment and seemed like a more experienced group. Suddenly, the dwarf turns, "Hey you there. What is it?" The dwarf, "Hello, when was the slave team placed in the labyrinth?" She says, "Yesterday at 10, and he scratches his beard. So a day and a half. They survived very well, even reached the exit quickly. Impressive." The elf has already realized she's useless with magic and picked up a bow. The poor thing gets startled, and he continues. The human, on the other hand, is holding 2 wands. "You seem overly confident in your magic." Caleb says yes. The dwarf says he likes that answer. Humility is insignificant. "By any chance, boy, do you have a fireball wand?" The protagonist answers once again that yes, and the dwarf asks a certain Zickle what they're going to do. The furry responds, "I don't know. We can't stay here for long." Emma, "Well, if he seems that confident, let's recruit him." However, the dwarf says it's too much confidence. In the end, he's just a slave and a mage. "We're going to end up disappointed with someone here." Zickle agrees and says, "Okay, and who are we going to choose? There's no other option. Considering Abyssin's level, we're going to end up disappointed." Upon hearing that name, Caleb remembers that the player card he found belonged to this person. He then asks, "By any chance, did you lose a comrade of yours who was a mage?" The dwarf says yes. "We lost him to a black wasp on the first floor. He was a friend I liked a lot, even though the decisions were questionable in that fight, and now he's dead." Emma tells him to be quiet. She had used her preservation power, so he's not dead. He could be revived if they brought a resurrection scroll. They're there discussing, talking, while Caleb observes. At least now he's sure. On the other side of that door is the exit he so desperately needs to pass through, but apparently a mage is necessary. Probably not the undead, since they have a priest and would have done it because it would be easy. Any kind of troll, salamander, goat, more normal creatures would be fine with this combination they have. The only situation that would require a mage is some kind of flying boss. But if that were the case, they would be interested in Urnil, who uses the bow. There's only one type of boss that they necessarily need a mage and one with a fireball. And with that, he asks, by any chance, is the boss behind this door a venomous spider? I like it when our protagonist uses logic to figure things out, right? All Albert Einstein, the boy. And the trio is there in shock, wanting to know how he knows that. The dwarf tells him to answer how he knows and what he knows about the labyrinth, to which Caleb responds that he knows a little. He knows that this venomous spider is a boss with deadly venom. Obviously, it does spider things, it shoots webs and traps its targets. The problem is that it's extremely fast. Usually, the doors are already closed, and when you're caught by the web, everything gets stuck. It's almost inevitable that a group that gets caught ends up dying. The only way to counter this boss is with good old fire magic. By setting the ceiling on fire, you can basically eliminate a good portion of all its webs. That's the basic strategy needed, and the protagonist says, to defeat this boss, you need me. Emma shouts that she agrees, and Zekel too, saying that, well, it seems the boy understood quickly, so he's the way. The dwarf's eyes sparkle. He says, all right, the two would temporarily be part of their group. However, Caleb says, no. And then they're like, huh, what do you mean? Confused, Urnil says, huh, Caleb, why are you refusing? We need to get out of here. He then explains, this seems like a good opportunity to kill the boss, especially since, we're finally going to be able to get out of this place. But there's something very important they didn't tell us. The number of people who can pass through this gate is 4. Urnil's expression has already changed, and he says, the gate is very unstable at the moment, and only one person can pass at a time. And when one passes, the portal's destruction process accelerates. It goes from blue to green to yellow and red and disappears. In the end, the limit is 4 people. There's only one spot in that group, and he's the necessary piece in this situation. In other words, what these guys are asking is for her to be abandoned. The dwarf isn't surprised and says, it's a surprise that you noticed even that. Huh. Caleb, I didn't want to hide it, so I apologize. I confess it would be perfect if we could take both of you, but what we need is a mage. So, I want to give you one last chance to return alive. It's just Caleb helping them and the elf girl leaving. At that moment, Urnil is there trembling, thinking she's going to be abandoned now. However, if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that a protagonist never abandons an elf. Caleb thinks, this offer is so good, it makes me think it might be a good solution. But even if I manage to escape this place, if I don't get out of slavery, I'll be thrown into the labyrinth again. The most important thing is, will these guys form a group with me when we get out of here? Obviously not, considering how much more advanced they are. I'll just be abandoned and thrown into a group of slaves and tossed here in the end. Not to mention that maybe I won't have the luck to fall with someone as skilled as Urnil. And with that, he says, Urnil, I'm sorry to tell them, but I'm not going to abandon you. Everyone is shocked, obviously. Even Urnil, ears drooping, is there not understanding. And with that, he says that, actually, he wants to make a suggestion to them. How about hiring us? The dwarf is a bit confused, right? Hiring? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? You don't want to compete for the gate and instead want a payment. Tell us how much you're asking for. Caleb says he wants 10,000 gold. Apparently, it's a lot because Urnil is in shock. However, he knows very well the value of things. Everything they've collected in this last day in the labyrinth will total about 2,000 gold. Adding the value of the two, he believes that he and Urnil together are worth about 6,000. And observing these guys' group, he sees that they've hired a priestess who is extremely expensive. In other words, they not only have enough money, but must have farmed a lot. They must be wanting to escape, especially considering they can resurrect their friend Abyssin. That's because the soul preservation magic doesn't last forever, so they must be in a hurry. Zekel, in the background, then says, there's not much to do, right? There's no other mage, so it'll have to be this kid. Caleb, however, only wants to accept if the priestess makes an oath in terms of a contract. Emma responds that it's okay, she'll make the unbreakable pact. However, the dwarf is offering 9,000. The protagonist raises it to 9,500, 9,300, 9,500. Poor dwarf says it's impossible. How is he going to lay his head on the pillow, having paid 9,500 for the slave mage? The protagonist, however, says he won't regret it, while the dwarf is there knowing he's sure he'll regret it. Emma tells him to stop being stubborn because they need to get out of there soon. Everyone in front of the door, and Emma starts making the pact, along with the dwarf Bertanin, Zekel, and her, they hire Caleb's group, Urnil, for 9,500. The condition to complete this is that Bertanen's group manages to cross the gate, and if any group dies, the contract is invalidated. The two make the oath, and with that, the door opens. It was time to enter the lair. We're already inside. Web on the ceiling, and Caleb notices the place is darker than he imagined. From the corner, he notices one of the neutral objects in this place, which were explosive barrels. And Bertanen is telling them to be careful with the web accumulations on the ground. Besides, before the boss starts attacking them, Caleb is supposed to start burning this web. The dwarf is telling him to do that when suddenly there's a web strike coming over his head, almost hitting his face, but he gives it a chop and manages to redirect it. He tells the damn Caleb to throw a fireball up and burn everything. Looking at the ceiling, the protagonist sees the boss messing with everyone. Even though the boss attacked first, now he's exposed. He knows he won't have many chances, so while this monster is attacking, he has to cause as much damage as possible. With that, the good old hourglass activates. Fireball, 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 and fireball. Wow, 4 casts rolling. All points are reset, and here come 3 fireballs surrounding the boss in the sky. The poor spider, right, has nowhere to run. The explosion happens up there. The guy's group is a bit confused, wanting to know, wait a minute, is it just me? Or were there no enchantments and 4 fireballs appeared out of nowhere? Caleb, however, tells them to wake up to life and focus because the chance has arrived. With the experience he has about this boss, they can't miss the chance to cause as much damage as possible at the beginning. He calls for Urnil, who shoots an arrow. 2. While the boss is falling, 3, 4, 5. My god, she sent the sequence. 3 hit the carapace. With that, he tells him to wait a second while he realizes that her goblin bow is useless against this boss. The monster falls to the ground, spewing fire everywhere. He immediately asks for a shield spell from Emma, who says it's okay, and tells Zekal to go for it the second the spider starts moving. The guy is angry, telling the damn beginner not to boss him around. But right then, the spider gets up, and he ends up obeying and goes for it. The monster comes to give him 2 claw strikes. He faces it, activates an ambush jump, and cuts off 2 front legs. The creature agonizes, falls with its butt facing everyone. Bertanen says it's going to explode and already tells Emma to obey the boy. Constellation shield raised, and Caleb realizes that at least the dwarf knows the patterns of this creature. The problem is that the most important thing in this place is finding a way to stop the venom explosion. With that, he pulls out another wand and uses a piercing ice attack, which goes straight to her belly, starting a freeze. He then tells Emma to remove the shield and for Bertanen to go for it. They're a bit confused, but he shouts, telling the damn dwarf to start causing some damage. Bertanen wants to argue, saying this is the moment to use the shield, but the protagonist tells him to go for it and start obeying, for God's sake. While thinking that in the game it's so much easier, the damn characters obey, it's just a click. Bertanen finally goes, saying he doesn't understand why this boy wants to command something, but okay. He gives that jump, we're in midair. He comes with that precise vertical cut on the creature's head, smoke everywhere, axe bathed in venom, and everyone's celebrating. Meanwhile, Caleb is there a bit hesitant. Apparently, these guys don't even know that when the venomous spider dies, there's a chance to activate the second phase. The people, however, are all there, commenting on the victory. For a first-floor boss, it was easier than they imagined. Urnil, however, asked, Airhead, why are you standing there with that wand to the ceiling? Are you crazy? He, however, tells her to look up, and when she turns, her expression changes. The friends want to know what they're shouting about, and with that, everyone's expression changes too. There was an infinite expanse of eggs on the ceiling. Everyone in shock, Emma says. No one warned there would be a phase 2. Bertanen is scared and says it's the first time he's going through this too. With that, the protagonist calls for Urnil and tells her to roll that barrel. She goes to the cute corner and throws it to him. The protagonist already tells Bertanen to throw it up. He was a bit confused, but Caleb just tells him to obey. He already tells Emma to put a light weapon on Urnil's arrow. Apparently, everyone is obeying, and she already casts the spell, and Urnil pulls the arrow, shoots it towards the ceiling, hitting the middle of the egg expanse. At that moment, Bertanen says he can now see perfectly and throws the barrel up too. When the barrel reaches the highest point, Caleb activates the hourglass, fireball, and apparently, it's going to be another one of those sequences. That's right, 4 towards the ceiling. Everything explodes in the cave once again, and now the team is a bit confused. Wait a minute, silent casting, with high-speed activation, with 4 spells at the same time. This is strangely easy. Bertanen is already thinking, this kid has something strange, he's a slave, but that talent is completely out of the ordinary. Where did this kid come from? And with that, the portal opens. Caleb is exhausted, saying, phew, it's finally over. He thinks, honestly, it's so much easier when you have an experienced team. It's just a bit frustrating because, unlike in a game, I control very few things. Suddenly, Zekel makes a grim face and demands the kid to reveal who he really is. All intrigued, he wants to know who this boy is that managed to conjure so many things at once. He's an incredible kid. The protagonist says it was nothing special, but they insist, saying they owe him one. Bertanen confesses, "Man, I'm impressed. This isn't the kind of skill a slave should have. What were you doing in this world before ending up here?" Caleb remembers he was just a nerd, man, playing games all day. And with that, he says he never was more than a slave, nothing special. The dwarf responds, "Well, I get it, right? Not everyone wants to reveal their own story." Urnil then comments that she never imagined they would win without taking any damage. Bertanen agrees, saying he only accepted the proposal because he thought the two of them would die quickly. To which Caleb responds that it was precisely because he imagined they would think that he set that price. The dwarf says he's smart, but this isn't over yet. Caleb agrees, and Zekel finds it strange, right? What else needs to happen? The gate is right in front of everyone. The protagonist explains, "We need to finalize this contract in the village." Emma says, "Well, yeah, it's a strange situation since the contract says we have to pass through the portal for this to be completed. Until then, it's kind of incomplete." Urnil finds this a bit unfair, saying, "What? The gate's right there. Isn't it just a matter of crossing and that's it?" Emma, however, explains that unfortunately, any contract made for the goddess of justice has to be completed exactly as written. In other words, Urnil and Caleb needed to pass through the gate. Now I understand the little contract he made. I'm a bit confused. Right, let's see what will happen. Urnil wants to know, right, and what if they can't pass? To which Emma responds that then the contract will be considered failed, and the entire team might be killed, and the contract deemed void. She's a bit stunned, while Caleb thinks he already imagined that no one brings 10,000 gold to a dungeon. The rule was made in a way to screw anyone who can't get out alive. And the friend asks, "Right, Caleb, did you know about these rules?" He says yes, every contract is only completed when you leave the dungeon. Zekel then claps his hands and says, that explains why that stingy Bertanen accepted such a deal. But then he says, "Hey kid, you're too talented to die here just like that. You better get out of this place alive and rob everything that dwarf has." It seems they're going to leave before them, but the protagonist and Urnil need to leave together, right? So they might have to find another way out. I think that's it. And before they leave, our protagonist goes to the back and says that this backpack belonged to their companion. At that moment, Bertanen is startled and runs, wanting to know if he's talking about Abyssin. He grabs and questions, "Right, where's his body?" The protagonist says he didn't see the body. They got this after fighting another group. The people now understand what happened and think it's quite a coincidence. Bertanen immediately says, "I'm sure you're wanting something to be returning this backpack to me." And Caleb says all he wants is the backpack itself. They can keep any item from the guy who died. The dwarf finds it odd. That was too little. But if that's the case, it's all right. They'll take Abyssin's things and give them some food. Caleb questions if they're going back to the labyrinth soon, and they say not for now. They really need to leave, go to the city, and buy another scroll. They had already brought another scroll, but Abyssin had already died and been resurrected. Caleb thinks this guy there could give up going to the dungeons. Right, it's just causing trouble. Then Bertanen says that, anyway, Caleb was 1,000,000 times better than Abyssin. They should have recruited him from the start. While they're praising Caleb, poor Urnil is all ears down, sad, feeling she wasn't much help. Here she comes with the drama. "Why don't you take Caleb with you?" Everyone is shocked because, in theory, I think that means she would die, right? The protagonist is a bit confused, and she explains, if one person arrives with you at the village, it already counts. That way, no team will be deleted, and with that, all of you will get out alive. Caleb keeps 9,500, becomes a free citizen, and joins your group. Emma, however, asks the obvious, right, what will she do? It must be hard enough surviving alongside Caleb. Imagine if she's alone, she won't last a day there. Because she responds that she doesn't even think they'll manage to find the exit again. At the pace things are going, they'll die anyway there. That's why she asks Caleb, please, not to think about her and just leave. She would have died a long time ago and will never forget. Actually, she will. You will die and won't remember anything. My dear, the world is cruel. Bertanen, a bit embarrassed, tells the elf she has to understand that recruiting people from another team inside a dungeon is considered a bit rude. I'm a bit confused with this damn dwarf. He says this as if he doesn't want to, but then he turns and tells the protagonist he wants to recruit him as an official member. No, wait, if Caleb accepts, he will officially hire both to receive 25% of the profits, plus the 9,500. I just want to understand how everyone will get out of there. Even the protagonist is thinking this offer is strangely generous. Then Urnil tells him it's okay, she'll manage to survive. He can't die there just because of her. When she says she wants to end this with a smile, a new mission comes up. Hourglass expansion opportunity. If you stay by Urnil's side now, her trust will reach 100%. As if he would leave the droopy ears. Right, man? And the system explains that when he's above 80%, right, a person's trust, he can give commands to that person on his turn. And after the turn ends, the person kind of, right, goes back to controlling themselves. So basically, he can kind of organize everyone there at the same time. Then he realizes it's just like a game. You evolve and unlock new abilities. And obviously, This thing of being able to give commands to team members is super overpowered, especially considering Urnil would obey everything. What are you thinking, man? Okay. He concludes it wouldn't work with extreme things, like, for example, don't breathe for 2 hours. Probably, he can only indicate basic things, like aim here, shoot that target, or jump back. Probably. This would also cost an action point. But, on the other hand, he could control much more in the middle of the fight. Bertanen then tells him to answer quickly, right? What will he choose? The protagonist is there wanting to think more, so he activates the hourglass to think, wondering which of the two choices would yield a better result. He doesn't know what this will cause in his future, so he has to be careful. In one of the options, he has the hourglass and an archer. In the other, he can instantly escape the dungeon and join a group of veterans. To be honest, I think the best option is Urnil, even though I also think he'll end up paying a high price. He does the obvious, right? He pulls her arm and says he appreciates the offer, but the answer is the same. He wants to escape this dungeon with her, so they can cross now, without them, as planned. This elf, with that Looney Tunes face, doesn't fool me. Something's wrong. However, right, the guy's team is shocked, asking if he's serious. Caleb says yes, he's dead serious, while thinking that even though this is a risky option, it's the best decision, and the one he would make if it were a game. In the long run, evolving Urnil more would yield more profit. Not to mention he can't be so cold as to just abandon her there. She keeps asking, wanting to know why he won't go, while he's just thinking it would be too hard to live with the guilt of it. Suddenly, Zico calls. He does the same again, right? Calls with an angry face and then gets emotional, saying Caleb is the coolest guy he's ever met. Among amateurs, among beginners, he's incredible. No one understands anything, and Bertanen says he wants Caleb even more now. Emma says she doesn't want to break the emotional connection there, but how does he plan to deal with the boss of the next gate? To which the protagonist responds with a question, wanting to know if he can take the spider's corpse with him. At that moment, the dwarf changes his mind, saying, no way. Sentiment is one thing, money is another. Caleb says he wants to buy it and reduce 1,500 from the debt of 9,500. Then Bertanen asks if her name is pretty new. She realizes the jerk doesn't even know her name until now. I compliment her, right, saying she's a very sincere girl and she's willing to sacrifice herself for Caleb, and that was cooler than the quadruple fireball conjuration. And that's why he hopes the two of them come back alive. With that, he hands over some potions and says it's a little gift for them, so they can survive. Zickle apologizes, saying he has nothing to give, right, but when they get out of there, they'll drink something together. And Emma says that as soon as they get out, they should go to Nathaniel's temple and look for Priestess Emma. She'll be there waiting with their reward. She conjures a blessing from Nathaniel and says she'll ask God to ensure their lives. The protagonist knows this blessing is good. It uses a lot of mana, but it increases all stats by 1 for 12 hours, plus immunity to some decay curses. However, finally, the time has come, and they are face to face with the portal, waving goodbye, telling them to remember them. 2 pass, and the portal turns yellow. Bertanen pulls out a mana stone, which in dungeons makes the portals appear again, faster, so it's like, kind of you being nice. Now the thing is already red, and he says that when they pass, they should go to the Adventurers Guild and look for him, right? Bertanen, a name they shouldn't forget. The portal closes, and Urnil falls to the ground, still asking, right, why did he do that? How are the two of them, alone, going to face the next boss? Even though he was prepared, he notes that for her, it was still too much. But she doesn't have to worry because his body has been marinated in years of addiction to this game, and he's already calculated everything about how they're going to get out of there. Then he tells her to stop crying and start tearing off the spider's legs. Finally, her trust reaches 100%, and now he can give direct commands. The sound of skin tearing echoes through the corridors, and Urnil says she's not saying this because she doesn't want to work. But like, right, she's willing to even kill herself for him. But why doesn't he help? And only she's collecting these things from this creature. Caleb says, trust me, keep tearing. I have my reasons. He doesn't want to explain, but the truth is that because she has more dexterity than him, the chances of things going right when she does it are higher. Not to mention he's still wanting to study this expansion ability. He has to start planning future fights considering this, and at the end of the ability, it now says, difficult actions or commands against her nature will not be executed. He doesn't know if he can, for example, order her to kick friends, doesn't know if he can order her to spin around, throwing flashes everywhere. He needs to quickly discover what limits he can place on her, who at this moment is all happy, saying she finally pulled out all the teeth. The protagonist says, perfect. Now they just need to start making some poisoned arrows. She's all happy, saying she didn't know she had such a talent for pulling teeth. While the guy is smitten, my friend, he says a second ago she was crying. But now, seeing her smile, that's how he prefers it. Just declare yourself already, man. It's chapter 7, and the guy is already how? Wanting to propose. Then he explains to combine the goblin's arrow with a poisonous tooth to create, right, poisonous arrows. Urnil says she understands the logic, but like, she won't be able to help much in the fight, right? So, what's the point? He explains that that she doesn't understand. The reason she's not able to help much is because her bow is very bad. For her class, the item and arrow you use are the most important things. Since they won't be able to get a good bow in this dungeon, they'll have to have better arrows. By combining the necessary materials, they can make this special arrow. And with a dangerous poison like this, even a mediocre bow becomes lethal. The annoying part is that it's kind of a gamble to successfully build this type of item. It's a combination that can go wrong. But suddenly, she already asks if it's to combine like this. He turns kind of, how did you do that? She says, well, I pressed the arrow at the back and it worked. He thinks she has a strange proficiency for making items. But perfect, now that she has the poison arrow. All she has to do is save it for when he orders. And it's time to get back to walking through the labyrinth. With that, we're walking through the corridors when he decides to test the hourglass expansion. He activates the ability, 60 seconds as always, and the 4 action points appear. He orders Urnil to give him a water bottle from the backpack, but strangely, he doesn't lose any action points. Then he realizes that maybe it's because it's not him doing it. As soon as the ability ends, she goes to the backpack, grabs the bottle, and he asks why she's handing it over out of nowhere. She, a bit confused, responds that he seemed maybe thirsty. Caleb smiles. It seems her mind creates some kind of reason for her to perform that action, but he'll need to understand how this works in a fight. And the perfect chance appears with 2 goblins at the end of the corridor. He spends an action point to conjure a fireball and orders her to shoot an arrow at the goblin's leg in the back. The turn ends, and the fireball is finished first, and the arrow hits the thigh. The goblin falls to the ground. He already comes with the wand in the face and takes another scorching hit. He then asks, Urnil, why did you decide to shoot the leg and not the head? To which she responds that in the position he was in, the leg seemed like an easier target. Then he's realizing that she really always invents an excuse and seems to obey very well. It will really be the perfect trump card for situations where he can't save himself. Or, for example, things that only a woman can do. What are you trying to say with that, man? He remembers, right, that she can't do anything against her personality. Yikes, I'm scared of this. Caleb now, he decides to test to see how it works. Okay. He tells her to do a Bibion dance. Apparently, it must be, right? A dance from Korea, and obviously, she does nothing, just looks a bit confused. He then decides to test again and gives an order for her to do any kind of dance. She takes a step forward and starts doing who knows what kind of dance that is. The protagonist stares at her, and she realizes she's doing some nonsense. Then he walks away, realizing that, well, at least it worked, right? We continue through the corridors, and this boy is always wanting to activate this magic. Damn it. Stop with this controlling hourglass, kid. But no, he's unstoppable. Activated it again and told her to say everything she knows about him before they entered the dungeon. She then comes, right, as natural as daylight and says, now that I remembered that on the boat you were talking about the reason you became a slave, it seems you killed someone. The protagonist chokes, wanting to know who he killed. She says she doesn't know exactly, but she imagined he would be much scarier. Good thing he's just a normal person. She's sure he must have had his reasons. He says yes, he had many reasons, while thinking that now he's screwed. Apparently, there's someone out there in the world who might not like him very much. She, however, continues delivering the information, saying it seems he killed someone from the fox race. Caleb remembers that foxes in this game are extremely intelligent, good at magic, and attractive enough to charm anyone. That's you, man. Don't try to project this furry preference onto the entire population. Urnil continues, saying she's sure that woman must have done something terrible for him to kill her. They just turn around and start walking, saying that a lot has happened. But, dude, not now. Shut up, turn the hourglass, and tell her to be quiet, for God's sake. She comments, so before you came here and became a slave, you were an explorer, right? In some city in the east. As far as I know, in every group of slaves, they always include someone with experience. You were probably that person in this group. The protagonist is starting to understand a bit about his past and why he ended up in this specific body. At that moment, as they turn the corner, they come face to face with the big exit gate. He's surprised, thinking he would find the exit, but this quickly. It's almost too lucky. Meanwhile, Urnil is off to the side and says she found someone. And look at that, by the face, it's the guy Abison, unconscious. Apparently, he's under the soul preservation magic, so it just looks like he's sleeping. By his face and hair, they are sure he was from a wealthy family. Caleb says that yes, that kind of magic is extremely expensive, while they are just ordinary slaves. Urnil is impressed. She had never seen this kind of resurrection or anything like it in front of her. Caleb then comments that maybe if they take the body, the family might give a good reward. The only problem is that, in this case, the guy is missing a leg. He then asks, do you hear any creature that sounds like it's chewing? She perks up her ears and immediately says yes, there's some disgusting sound. He asks about wings flapping, and she says no, there are no wings. Caleb is confused. If it were the black wasp, as the dwarf said, she should be hearing wings flapping. He then says they will have to take a look in the room where the sound is coming from. She heads to another side, saying they don't even have to go far. There, they find a black wasp egg. The protagonist is looking around, and a lone egg like this, something's off. If adventurers had really fought here, there should be some signs on the walls, but there's nothing, just an egg in the middle of this room, and something doesn't smell right. Suddenly, his expression changes, and he asks if there have been cases where adventurers are disappearing in this labyrinth. Urnil stops to think and says there was a case of someone who attacks from behind, a guy who supposedly killed the black wasp alone while his entire team was killed. She wants to know why he's curious about this, while Caleb says he knew it. One of the biggest problems appeared for him, a thief, which is the hardest class for a mage to deal with. He then asks if she's ever heard of a possessed adventurer. She thinks and says no. He realizes that, indeed, it's something rare even in this world. Even he, who had cleared the ruins of this game countless times, had only seen a few cases of possessed adventurers. Basically, they are people whose souls were taken by the dungeon masters and serve this place. They have incurable madness, status, and the problem is that they can use all their old skills, but they are even stronger. Now it was explained why they found the exit so easily, without many monsters. Urnil asks if they're in trouble, and he realizes he's scaring her. That was the worst option, even though he was really a bit apprehensive. He then tells her to relax, that she has him around, so there's no danger at all. In the next chapter, we're at the bar, and Bertonin is saying he was telling the truth. Oh man, stop my friend. You're telling me you found a guy who conjured 4 spells without saying a word all at once? That would be the genius of the century or something never seen before. Bertonin says if he doesn't want to believe it, then don't, but he's telling the truth. To which the guy says, all right, when your legendary friend shows up, you come back here then. He throws the beer mug, and Bertonin says he hasn't even ordered yet, to which the bartender jokes, saying it's just like his friend. It's the silent conjuration. The dwarf gets angry and drinks, wanting to hit this bastard. A while later, the guy at the bar asks, and Zikal, how did he do? Bertonin explains, oh, it wasn't that bad. His experience is okay, and his skills are good. The friend says it's obvious he's good. He was the one who introduced this person. With enough experience, he'll become the next backstabber, which is the name of the guy who, apparently, must be the possessed one. Bertonin says, for God's sake, if the backstabber is one of the most famous of all. Poor Zikal can't compare to the guy who carried 2 people alone to the 2nd floor. It's just a shame that someone with that talent was captured right away by the dungeon master. While he's lamenting, suddenly someone arrives at the door calling for Bertonin. And here comes the worried mom. Where's my son, Abison? Is it true my boy died? Bertonin turns. It's true, unfortunately. He went alone to find the exit and got bitten by the black wasp. So, you know, I think it's over. The woman is shocked, asking if he's telling the truth. The poor thing faints, saying she asked him to take care of him. How could he die like that on this mission? The brother, however, tells the mother to calm down. He's still under the soul preservation magic. He then looks to the side and says, Bertonin, listen, I know Abison's death isn't your fault, and I also know the Bertaven family wouldn't be foolish enough to let this end this way. You already had a rescue plan, right? Bertonin just responds, relax. The soul preservation lasts a week, so it'll be easy to resurrect him. The scroll arrives in 2 or 3 days, and then we'll go after him. Wow, they're going to have to hunt the body in the dungeon? Yikes. The guy asks how, and Bertonin shows he's got one of his items, so it's just a matter of using the magic to track lost items. The platinum-haired guy asks how he got that, and Bertonin says a certain genius mage found it for him. The guy is curious, and the guy behind the bar says, yeah, it's the genius mage, the slave who conjures 4 spells in a second without saying a word. The crazy dwarf here believes this person exists. Apparently, no one believes it. The guy is already thinking, for God's sake, why would there be a slave with that level of talent? And he tells Bertonin to at least stop with these stupid jokes. The mother tells Clarence to think on the other side. If there's a genius mage, maybe he can help recover the body. To which Bertonin says it's possible. His group had 2 people. Clarence, however, turns and says, a group with a slave and 2 people on that floor, clearly, they have no chance of saving them. Let's, for God's sake, put a reward for whoever recovers the body. While he's saying this, there's a crocodile with glowing eyes that immediately stands up and wants to know how much they'll pay. It's just the counterattacks. They operate on the 3rd floor. They're not clumsy like Bertonin's stupid group. But Clarence gave him a stare and told him to shut up, and the crocodile was shocked. He ran off right there to the rest of his group. If you're so tough, go in there and save your own brother. He says that trying to solve things with money in this situation will only attract weird people. The mother, still, wants to know, right, so how are we going to solve this? The boy will obey me, man. He says he'll go there himself with Bertonin's group. I think I've got the hourglass activated here too. Bertonin says, well, if the mage from the 5th floor goes with us, it'll be easy. Clarence just responds that of course he's going to bring his brother. And besides, he's curious to know who this genius wizard is. Poor Caleb, he hasn't even left the labyrinth and is already being sought after. Also, Big Mouth, annoying dwarf, man, stop talking about him to everyone. Back with the Instagram famous guy, he tells Urnil not to give up. She asks what he's talking about. He says, I know, we have to wait for the dwarfs group, but as long as we have this larva, which will die in a couple of days from hunger, we're fine. That's because she's the child of the floor leader, so any other monster that smells her runs away immediately. The downside is that the second she dies, everyone will notice and start moving. She then asks if they shouldn't just head to the next exit, but he says it will be impossible. If this backstabber guy is really free, killing everyone, it's impossible for them. The best plan in Caleb's mind was for the two of them to find this guy and manage to attack him. It will be difficult, even though they aren't weak. Urnil, however, is insecure, asking if they really have any chance of defeating this guy, who is considered one of the best. He says yes, there's a way, although it will be quite difficult. The brave one, excited, says it doesn't matter what it is, she'll do her best. He says all right then, but the strategy is going to be a bit intense. Sometime later, explosions are happening. The goblins are all in shock, electrocuted, shot in the head. Caleb says they're going to go through hellish training from now on. The first goal was to kill at least 100 goblins. With that, they charge forward, arrows, fireballs, electrocuted, the poor creatures, all getting beaten. That dishonest formation on the little creatures of the first floor that have no chance at all. Since 5 is the limit on this floor, and 4 is what they reached after killing the boss, they just need to farm to reach the maximum. That's because this level 5 has the potential to unlock one more skill. Besides, they'll collect as many magic stones as possible. With that, he tells Urnil that now they're going to hunt the goblin shaman. He's the only creature on this floor that drops some scrolls. And the boy doesn't stop. He wants to farm in a hurry. It's already night, with the poor girl exhausted on the ground. Caleb, however, is happy that all the preparations are done, while Urnil says she feels like that larva getting weaker and weaker. He reveals that yes, the situation, in this case, is also dangerous because she'll soon die, as she hasn't eaten in 2 days. She says they have the option to give the abyssum for the creature to eat, right? That way, it will last longer. To which he responds that it would be madness. Giving a preserved body with that ability for a creature to eat, it was one of the biggest crimes. Besides, they fortunately got all the items they need. Urnil sees the orc barrel full of water, imagines that, right, it must be part of his plan. He says yes, everything is almost ready. Now let's rest, because soon we'll make a little mess. He lies down saying that all right, then he's going to sleep first. And she comes close, which he doesn't know, right? Why does the bastard always sleep first? There must be some reason, because he keeps thinking there, right, that he has to sleep to level up, both of them, and besides, make the plans. The faster he sleeps, the stronger they get, so it's the most important thing. He says he'll let her sleep an extra 30 minutes, and with that, she gets all happy, saying, all right then. She turns, telling him to sleep soon, and he says to wake up in 2.5 hours. Once again, in the state of rest, both at level 4 to 5, and now you can choose a new special skill. In the next chapter, they stand at the door, and Nil says, hey Caleb, I'm not doubting you, but do you really want to face the boss like this? He simply replies, don't doubt me, what you see isn't all there is. Wow, getting philosophical. She's a bit skeptical, especially since he's got the creature's shell around him, and it seems to be stinking because it's spoiled. However, he tells her to trust him, saying that this wasp egg shell is extremely tough, and the creature is now a pet. The poor thing is like, please, give me back. The door opens, the trio enters, and wow, there's a throne with a guy with red hair sitting on it. Caleb doesn't care. He pulls out 2 wands and challenges the guy to come at him. But this one seems like a real final boss. In the blink of an eye, he's already behind the trio. Whoa, here comes the dagger. But what he doesn't expect is that the turn is activated. Caleb is startled. I can't even see. But if he disappeared from in front of us, he must have used the ambush jump ability and is behind us. Good thing I anticipated this standard move and was already aiming backward. First, I need to hit him with a quadruple lightning attack. At the same time he gives this order, he tells Urnil that if this guy collapses from the shock, she should throw water on him. With that, all possible actions, including the 4 points in her action, are used, and time unlocks. The boss takes the lightning sequence. Urnil grabs a bucket and throws it on him. The monster is confused, and Caleb knows that now that he's afflicted by the wet state, it's time for a counterattack. He sends an ice spike, but the boss seems to dodge using the shadow jump. However, the protagonist knows that this guy must have used all his movement ability cooldowns. He tells Urnil, I'm going to lift the barrel, you shoot it with an arrow. She obeys immediately. The arrow hits perfectly, splashing water all over the room, and once again, he activates the ice spike. The entire floor of the room freezes, and the boss is just staring in anger. Caleb wants to know what this guy is going to try now. The only abilities that can get him out of this situation are careful steps or wall walking. Wow. But he got distracted because something hits him square in the chest and shatters the eggshell. At least he's just thrown back and tells Urnil he's fine, he just lost the armor. However, He's shocked that the guy used the throwing ability from that distance and caused that damage. His luck is that both the distance and the eggshell ensured his survival. But the boss used another ability to pull the dagger back to his hand and starts disappearing. Caleb calls for Urnil and tells her to locate him with an arrow. She activates her keen hearing, hears him stepping on the wall above, and shoots an arrow in that direction. The boss, in the middle of his movement, notices the arrow coming and manages to defend himself, but his invisibility is cut. From above, staring at the two, he goes to pull a grenade from his back. The problem for Caleb is that the hourglass was still on cooldown. Yikes, there were still 15 seconds to use it. But the guy is laughing, saying this was the moment he was waiting for. The crazy guy threw an ice spike at the wasp baby there. He had leveled up just to create this opportunity. That's because he received the Killing Frenzy ability, and with that, he activates the hourglass. The ability he received restores 2 action points when he defeats an enemy. Obviously, the ability also has a cooldown and can only be used once per fight, but having kept that creature by his side created the perfect opportunity, as the guy is now suspended in midair. Aiming, he knows he has to hit a ping-pong ball 10 meters high mid-flight, which isn't easy. Since electricity is a more precise point, he decides to go with it, and with that, the points run out. 2 bolts of lightning shoot from his hand, one hitting the grenade in the boss's hand, exploding everything in midair. Caleb smiles, saying it's no wonder he was a sharpshooter in the army. He then asks for the location again from Urnil, and the second she points, he sends another ice spear. Man, this one hits the boss square in the chest, who is now frozen solid. Caleb knows that at least now, with the frozen effect, it's impossible for him to dodge. He tells Urnil to take the shot. A poison arrow flies in the direction, and wow, it seems to have hit the boss in the chest. Caleb is celebrating, saying that no matter the distance, this is the end for this creature. That's because even if the poison doesn't enter the bloodstream, just by breathing, the boss will absorb enough. Yeah, Caleb, but one thing I know in life, when you celebrate, your plan usually goes wrong. The boss fell. He knows this creature will take 20 damage per second for 20 seconds. Even if he can't see the HP bar, this will end soon. But he talked too much, and the expression changed. Suddenly, there's a red light happening in the smoke. He tells Urnil that it's time for Plan B, the situation he hoped they wouldn't encounter, and also the reason why adventurers possessed in the labyrinth are so dangerous. The fact that, in some situations, they can even use the special abilities they had when they were people. The good part for Caleb is that he already expected this to happen and came up with a Plan B. We hear a conversation they had a little earlier, and the poor wasp baby in the background, watching everything, already knew it was going to die. Caleb said, "It's just for you to shoot a poisoned arrow and watch what happens." Confused, she found it strange, right? Especially since using both would give them more chances. But the protagonist responds, "They said this guy defeated the black wasp alone, and I find that odd. The only way he could do something like that is if he had some way to neutralize the poison. That's because, even though his class was a bandit and he was agile, it was hard to fight against the wasp. How do you avoid a single drop of poison to not die? To me, a more realistic scenario is that he was poisoned but didn't die." Urnil asks, "Wait, are you saying he has a healing ability that removes poison?" He says, "I don't know if it's exactly magic healing, but he has some way to remove the poison with some item, maybe. One thing is certain, we have to confirm if he can detoxify. That was the main priority." Urnil is scared, right? Like, if he can detoxify, it's the end for us. But Caleb smiles and says no. That's when Plan B starts. Back in the fight, the boss continues to expand the aura, activating the adrenaline surge. It restores HP, resets cooldowns, and even removes any negative status. And right at that moment, here he comes again, with quick steps, approaching the protagonist. Yikes. The worst part is that there are still 3 seconds left for the hourglass. Urnil asks if she should shoot, but he says not yet. Now that he has the movement ability activated, he'll dodge easily. For Plan B to work, the protagonist needs to create distance between him and Urnil. He slides on the ice, while sending a bolt of lightning towards the boss. But the monster steps to the right, dodges, and continues approaching, grabbing Caleb's arm, managing to grab his hand and break it instantly, making him drop the wand. Man, it's bad for our guy. He's on the ground, the stab is coming. He calls for Urnil, who then shoots an arrow. The boss is forced to move to the side, using that shadow ability, but along with it, he took Caleb. Oh man, at this moment, he's about to say Plan B, but an attack comes right at his stomach. But hold on, Urnil is screaming, but I didn't see a drop of blood. Wait, just because I said it, I saw it. Man, he's pierced, the boy. At that moment, he pulls out one of the potions he got from the dwarf, but the damn bandit rubbed in his pocket to steal one too. At the same moment, the potion falls to the ground and the boss is already face to face again. But this potion taking gave enough time for the hourglass to activate. The stab was almost at his chest, and Caleb says, "Thanks, fool, for falling for my bluff." Urnil is far away, and he says that Plan B is in play. From the beginning, he wanted to tank these attacks using the potion. This means that the next stab won't kill him. Drinking the potion and fiddling with the scroll already used 2 points, He tore the scroll, not sure doing what, leaving only 1 point left and, at the same time, told Urnil to shoot the bastard. Caleb smiles in the last second, saying that now the miserable one will have to say goodbye. The last point is spent, time resumes, while the protagonist has the potion in his mouth, the stab coming to his chest, and the boss confused. He activated a magical armor that gave the fool a big hug, saying that now he won't get out of there. The magical armor scroll protects against physical attacks and nullifies up to 100 damage or 5 attacks. The boss already tried to stab him twice, but there's an arrow that comes straight and hits his rib, while Caleb asks what it feels like to be hit by the second one. Finally, the real battle was about to begin, but up there everything is taken by the poison. Urnil is like us, right, wanting to know if Caleb is well trapped there. Yikes, both were poisoned and Caleb realizes that his lung was being destroyed by the poison. However, the advantage is that he has the potion in his mouth, so he just needs to keep the boss nearby. But the damn guy, while pushing his shoulder, is coming to stab him again from the side. The rib is going to bleed too, but then the knife falls to the ground and the boss lets go of the protagonist, falling to his knees. However, he's losing consciousness too and falls to his knees. At that moment, Urnil comes running, confused, wanting to know why he made this plan if they both had to cross the gate. Apparently, Caleb is conscious but can't move, thinking that even drinking the potion constantly, it still hurt like hell. In the end, it was a risky bet. He thought the potions would be enough to end the poison's effect, but it seems he's not so confident anymore, while Urnil tells him to drink another one. I don't know what happened, but some time passed and the portal opened behind them. Yeah, it seems it worked, because he gets up, saying he can finally breathe. He even praises her, saying that twice in a row she hit a perfect shot. She's all awkward, saying she was insecure, while Caleb thinks her aim is really good. Every shot in this world has a precision reduction when fired from a lower ground. However, the protagonist already knew that Guy would use the shadow step to do that, and that's why he gave Urnil the curve artillery ability. As long as the target is identified, the projectiles will ignore any obstacle, curve, and hit the target. The droopy-eared one keeps crying, saying she was worried, while he says they have more to resolve before leaving there quickly. Finally, let's get out of this cave, folks. I want to see the world outside. And what the protagonist is going to do is that now 4 people can leave. He's going to take the bodies of those guys. Next chapter, we're at the Swamp Bucket Rat Tavern. Someone holding a mug wants to know what brings someone to drink there at this hour. Bertanen looks to the side, wanting to know if the person is there to check out the scroll. It's Clarence, saying his brother's life is at stake, so he has to personally verify everything. Bertanen says, "Don't worry, the scroll will arrive today, then we'll enter the labyrinth at 5 in the morning. Clarence, however, is leaning there, knowing that the soul preservation scroll is almost at its limit. If they fail to rescue her, even with another scroll, resurrection becomes impossible. Wow, I thought it was a man, but apparently, it's a woman our protagonist saved. And right at that moment, someone is opening the door, calling for everyone. It's Emma, saying she brought the resurrection scroll. Yeah, in theory, it's time for them to head to the labyrinth, but some people are saying that the folks from the first floor came out. Clarence, confused, asks, "What's this about the first floor gate opening?" She just says that's exactly it. They have to go see what's happening. The scene then shifts to the guild's underground, where the portal appeared. The girl with glasses stretches, saying it's been a while since this portal opened. Why hasn't anyone come out yet? She's there angry because she has to wait for someone to come out of it, which doesn't make any sense. Right at that moment, Bertanen's team arrives, wanting to know why the gate is open. Clarence also approaches, and the instructor already says she knows the news. He came to see if Abyssine managed to get out, right? He says he just wants to know who will pass through this gate because he's going in to save her anyway. But right at that moment, Emma announces that something is coming out now. The instructor is about to say there's something wrong with this portal and no one will appear when a head pops through. Oh my god, the protagonist threw the poor thing face first onto the ground on the other side. Bertanen and the troop are startled. Clarence runs to help, and then another body comes out, this time the bandit. Everyone recognizes him immediately. It's the infamous backstab. The instructor is in shock. Why is everyone who crosses this gate a corpse? One thing, however, is obvious. The group that crossed this portal has at most 2 people, and Clarence remembers the guy who has an extremely fast conjuration of 4 abilities. The boy hasn't even seen the protagonist yet and is already sweating, scared that maybe it's true. The portal is opening, and Bertanen thinks it's going to be the protagonist. However, who comes out first, obviously, is Urnil, all awkward there. Weird. Emma and the group cheer, saying they're happy she really came out well. She says yes, but Caleb, who carried her from start to finish. The instructor, however, falls to the ground. Wait, you're one of the slaves, aren't you? Urnil says yes. What's the problem? The problem is what the woman is thinking. Not even an extremely skilled adventurer managed to defeat backstab. So why is a random slave who was thrown into this place to basically die coming out? It's impossible for an untrained group with beginner weapons to have done this. At that moment, the portal turns red, the little hand comes out first, and Caleb appears. 4 wands placed on his waist. Immediately, Zickel and the group celebrate, saying he not only succeeded but also brought the bodies of the people. Caleb, at that moment, says he needs 8,000 coins and faints in Urnil's arms. Obviously, some time passes and we're in the temple, Nathaniel. He opens his eyes, a bit tired, at Emma's side, wanting to know what happened. She comments, right, that he fainted the moment he came through the gate, collapsed due to the poison and the excess of potions. He, however, puts his hand on his face, says it's okay. At least he survived thanks to that. But the important thing, right, where's the money? She tells him to calm down. The money is right there beside him. He doesn't need to worry. All the coins are there. We've seen that this boy here is a bit of a frontier blonde, right, man? Because even with her saying and handing it over, he goes to check all the coins and still asks, why are there only 7,850 coins here? It's missing 150. Emma says it's the price for her being there beside him, healing him. He replies that he never asked for medical treatment. That's basically extortion. If she healed him, it was because she wanted to. Emma, feeling awkward, says it was Urnil who asked her to do it, which already makes Caleb angry, thinking that woman is spending his money. However, Emma quickly changes the subject and wants to know if he will now be able to buy his status as a free person and go to the Magic Academy. He says yes, but he's more curious about what happened to Abison and Backstab. She explains that Abison's scroll is finishing its effect and she'll soon be resurrected, while Backstab was sent to the mortuary. He asks if there's no way to bring him back. She says unfortunately, it's not possible. He wasn't under any preservation magic, a type of ability that can bind a person's soul to their body. It lasts a week, and if you recover the body within that period, you can bring the person back. But Caleb knows another way. Probably, Backstab's soul was stored in a barrel controlled by the labyrinth master. If the soul remains forever in a resting place, it's possible to resurrect the person. The problem is that no one knows exactly where this resting place is, so it's quite difficult. Except for him, who has already beaten this game on the God of Strategy difficulty. With that, we're outside and say goodbye to Emma. Guys, let's head to the good old arc we all love. We've arrived at the Magic University. Urnil comes to greet our boy. Oh girl, go buy some clothes. Are you going to be a slave walking back and forth forever? You too, Caleb, still with that wretched necklace around your neck. But that's exactly what he was telling her. It's time for them to buy their freedom. However, Urnil's expression changes when someone says that, according to the calculation, Urnil can't gain her freedom. Caleb, confused. Hold on, what do you mean by that? We have more than enough money. Because the man explains, the cost for freedom is 3,000 gold, but based on contributions, Urnil is entitled to 2 of this gold, and that's why she can't become free. Man, you weren't there to see what happened. Don't act crazy. Caleb says, hold on, something's wrong. What's the criterion for this distribution? The guy, uninterested, says he'll show it since he doesn't want to explain. The scales of justice can show an adventurer's contribution, and at that moment, according to the testimonies of Bertanen's group, Caleb contributed 27,000 and she too. In other words, Bertanen's group was sucking up to the protagonist so much that now the other one can't get free. What catches Caleb's attention, however, is that this magic is something he had never seen in the game, and he comments, hold on, Urnil's contribution is too low. She alone built the weapon used to finish Backstab. The guy, however, responds that it doesn't matter. It's not related to Bertanen's group and the contract they formed. Caleb says it doesn't make sense what he's saying. The plan was to get the poison arrow so they could both leave and only then receive the 8,000. If he didn't believe in her ability to create these arrows, he wouldn't have even been able to leave and wouldn't have proposed this plan. At this, the guy looks down and, interestingly, the scale starts to have its value modified. The guy says it's okay. They'll start to understand exactly what happened in this adventure right now and cast a lie detection spell. The two are enveloped in an aura, and the effect is quite simple. This magic amplifies the body's responses when someone tells a lie, right? Kind of like you react there, giving a little shake, maybe. The guy, still a bit lazy, says, I hope you understand, but this happens with all slaves and the contribution of all teams. Now go. Drop those bags and start telling everything that happened in that labyrinth honestly. But Caleb is insecure because Urnil is very insecure, right? She always thinks she did nothing and he did everything. On the other hand, they still have an advantage in the negotiation, which is the fact that they recovered Backstab. Just what that guy had in items was worth more than 14,000. It was equivalent to a good profit for a group of 4 prepared people entering the labyrinth. However, Urnil's share, in the end, is 20%. Wow, that's 2,925. And if I'm not mistaken, it's 3,000. That's exactly what the guy says. Caleb is confused, wondering, I'm sure she worked hard, so why is it counting as only 20%? And Urnil is there trembling at seeing this number. The guy asks if she's really disappointed. She shouldn't be, because actually, the average profit of a slave in the labyrinth is 500 gold. That's with a survival rate of 10%. However, she's got 2,950, and none of this is because she's exceptional in any way. All she did was operate according to Caleb's capabilities. From everything he heard, basically, her work in the fight was to shoot 2 poisoned arrows. Basically, anyone else could have followed his orders and replaced her. At this, he changes his expression and tells her to speak up if she accepts this decision or not. Poor Urnil, who is already all insecure, says she obviously agrees, while the protagonist is there wanting to know why this guy seems so satisfied to say something like that. The man already gives a stare and says, "Caleb, if you're thinking of being merciful in any way, it's best to stop here. Sending criminals to the labyrinth is the kind of punishment that awaits you. Do you want to buy your freedom or not?" The guy, with his 19,500, says yes, while the poor girl is all broke. With that, the guy conjures something with a wand, and his necklace dissolves. The man congratulates him for now being a free person and says that concludes this evaluation. Wow. But before they can say anything, other people come in and take Urnil away, saying she's going back to the slave place. Since, apparently, she's a good archer, maybe she'll be sold for a good value to the Adventurers Guild. Caleb knows that at this moment, there's nothing he can do except find her later. Apparently, the protagonist isn't that worried about her, right? The guy asks if he's interested in entering the magic university, saying they can't lose a boy like him, who has an invisible conjuration with ultracast of 4 instant abilities. Just the titles of the guy's spells are almost a book, and Caleb is impressed. Really, this guy's attitude changed the second he became a free person. However, he asks what the benefits of joining this academy are. When the guy puts his hand on his chin to answer, suddenly, someone opens the door of the room shouting for Jacob, wanting to know if this is the friend they're talking about. The genius mage of invisible conjuration with ultracast and talent for 4 instant abilities. He wants to see this boy with his own eyes. The protagonist approaches and says he's Caleb. The old man already says, "I like your look, but now's not the time to talk about what happens in the academy. You just became a free man, and I want to know what you think the mission of a mage is." Caleb asks, "To develop magic and hunt monsters in the labyrinth." The guy, however, responds that no, there's a much nobler mission. The mission of a mage is to exterminate those possessed by the isekai. Basically, people from another world who reincarnated in people from this world here. And the old man says they've been monitoring everything that happens in the labyrinth for a long time and concluded that these monsters and creatures appear because other eruptions also happen in the labyrinths. The numerous cases of the possessed who come from another world. They discovered that when these guys from another world don't enter the labyrinth strengthens in search of eliminating and hunting them in the world. And that's why everyone from another world needs to be killed. Caleb realized right away that even as a free person, a peaceful life is impossible. And here comes more plot twist, the old man says. "In your records, it's written there that you came from the city of Wundam because of the crime of having killed another slave who was possessed by the isekai." Caleb is in shock. Hold on. The person this body killed before I took this body was someone who had also been possessed? The old man, however, says, "Oh boy, I love you. Enough talk, let's get straight to the point. You're going to be on the hunter's team. Surely, you're not someone possessed, are you?" The protagonist is there. No. The old man, confused, says, why aren't you saying anything? The guy, Caleb, isn't speaking because at this moment, he still has the lie detection magic under his foot. Wow, guys, the boy's in trouble, and the chapter ended. Let's go to the next one. The old man is staring, saying, "There's something weird, boy. This isn't a difficult question, so why are you silent?" The protagonist wonders how he's going to get out of a situation like this. He just got out of the labyrinth and thought things were getting easy. Maybe he should have gathered more information about this world before coming here to seek freedom. While his head is spinning, looking for a solution, the old man keeps wanting to know. "Speak up, are you possessed or not?" Right at that moment, the door starts to open, and Clarence appears, saying hi to the professor and saying the boy must be disoriented, just escaped the labyrinth where he almost died. It's too early to be recruiting him for the club. The old man turns, however, and says, "Clarence, you have to learn that a diligent farmer never wastes a good harvest. And besides, if you're here, it means Professor Isilov must be interested in him, because no one in this academy would ignore this talent." Clarence then says that's obvious. Someone with invisible conjuration, 4 conjurations, and you already know everything, is much more suitable for hunting in the labyrinth than looking for the possessed. Wow. The story gave an interesting plot twist. Could Clarence also be an isekai? And then there's this fight between the labyrinth hunters who are all from the isekai, Wow, the thing here went from 6 to 8. I'd say. Caleb is kind of there understanding while the old man is angry, and Clarence gives a hand to our boy, saying they have to decide now. So, do you accept the offer from Professor Isilov's Labyrinth Explorers Club? The scene changes to the corridor, with the protagonist realizing if he had answered wrong, he would have been killed right there after leaving the labyrinth. He was lucky this guy arrived and managed to get out intact. However, at this moment, a different idea comes to mind. Wait a minute, if the lie detection magic is so convenient, why is it difficult, in theory, to find the possessed? They can detect quickly, so why even do an interrogation or anything like that? Maybe this lie detection magic has some limitation, which makes him even more angry, but clearly, there's some loophole. At this, Clarence stops in the corridor, turns, and says the magic is finally over. He apologizes for introducing himself so late, but his name is Clarence, a senior wizard. He's also the older brother of Abyssin, whom he saved, and that's why he's there, to thank him for recovering her body that way. Caleb says it's okay, he only did it to become a free citizen. Clarence thanks him once again and says he preferred to wait for the magic to end, to be more polite. That's because he considers that thing extremely rude. Legally, almost no one has the right to use this magic. Only slaves can be evaluated with it. At this, Caleb realizes that damn old man was going against the law. The moment he asked the question, he was already a free man. Clarence then apologizes on behalf of Professor Meldini and says not everyone in this world is against those possessed by the isekai. In the Magic University itself, there were 3 factions. The first faction was Professor Meldini's, which prioritized eliminating all the possessed. Professor Isolov's faction was more concerned with eliminating the labyrinth. And lastly, Dahlstream's faction was those who worshipped the possessed, basically the slackers, right? Who would let the isekai solve everything. The protagonist stops to explain about these worshippers. He says, Dahlstream. They've been researching magical texts and tomes. In the research, it seems the possessed have a war with the Labyrinth Master or something like that. And basically, the Labyrinth is like the entrance to this war. The Labyrinth Master captures these human souls and drives them insane. However, it seems there's a lone sorcerer capable of resisting this madness, and Professor Dahlstream believes this surviving wizard will be one of the possessed by the isekai. And wow, a wizard with turn-based ability, someone who can freeze the physical world and operate in a world of unique reason. Clarence has no idea what this turn-based thing means, but from the study, it seems something about how to freeze and make decisions, which he didn't quite understand, but what he knows is that all this is legends, full of incomprehensible stuff, and most factions don't even count on it. Wow, Caleb, everyone wants you. The protagonist asks if this can be called a faction, right? Some guys who just study. And Clarence says they survive thanks to the courtesy of the professors who insist on it. However, now his professor is waiting, and it's time for them to enter. Inside, he says his club researches and investigates strange phenomena of the labyrinth. Oh, actually, it's Isilov speaking, introducing himself, explaining that at this moment, they are more focused on the possessed adventurers than on the isekai people. Oh, like that guy Backstab, you know? That's exactly what he says in the next panel. Oh damn. Caleb realizes not even the professor knows there's a place where souls are stored. Isilov then says, thanks to you, Caleb, who brought Backstab's body, a great opportunity has appeared. We will be able to track his soul and maybe prove a hypothesis he has. But before that, he wants to say he recognizes Caleb's talent and says he would be a great help to the club. Why don't you join us? Huh, my boy. We're looking to find Backstab's soul. The protagonist smiles. You know, he's done this mission countless times in the game. What he remembers that was interesting is that when you recover the soul of a dead adventurer, you can recruit them for your team. And if the protagonist is going to continuously enter the labyrinth, you know, it would certainly be good to have the help of strong people. Besides, he needs to avoid Meldini, you know, the guy who hunts the isekai. The Dahlstream seems to be too interested in the summoned people, even more so with this business of looking for the turn-based wizard. He seems to know what the best option is, but asks if he can form his own team to do the activities. Isilov, confused, says he's never heard anyone asking about something like that. Normally, at least, a senior has to be in the group to ensure safety. Casually, Caleb says that's the case. He then agrees to join Isilov's team. Ah, it was all very smooth. I even thought there would be more trouble here. The scene changes to the magical dormitory in our boy's room. The girl led him to the door. There, he entered, feeling amazed. The dormitory was strangely good, much more spacious and luxurious than the places he's used to in the game. At this, he asks, you know, if I manage to form a team, can they stay here? The woman says officially no, but if things worked as they should, she wouldn't be exhausted. The protagonist realizes this poor girl is working more than she should, and theoretically, you know, she kind of accepted. But now our boy is in the little bathtub, melting away. This week, he finally escaped the labyrinth with Urnil. Urnil, whom he doesn't care about, right? While the girl was taken back to slavery, he's in the bathtub melting away. Just because I said protagonists never abandon the blonde elf girl. However, I'll give him credit, you know. He's disbelieving with the sequence of things that happened right after he left that place. The plan for tomorrow morning is to go to the library, gather information, and then somehow look for Urnil. At least, it seemed like the tutorial just ended, but there's a lot to happen. For now, though, he's going to rest a little. Next chapter, we're in the classroom, and the protagonist is still exhausted. After taking a light nap in the bathtub, he went to the library and is exhausted. His biggest concern at this moment, however, is being hit by another lie detection magic. Suddenly, someone comes from behind, saying he must be the student everyone's talking about. Oh boy, it's that Dahlstring guy, right? He introduces himself with a nice to meet you, saying he's an old hermit from the magical university. And then he talks about memorize, a magic that can summon a book of memories. He's already in the middle of the room, announcing that this is a special ability you get after making a contract with Wissus, the god of wisdom. Whoever signs there will get the contract from the assistant and will also be able to use the book of memories. He then activates memorize, and the little book appears. Apparently, the protagonist signed because he's already conjuring, and the book appeared too. What he discovered is that the number of slots in the Book of Memories varies according to the wizard's level. At this moment, he's at level 5, so he only has 3 slots. Oh, that's cool. Dullstream explains that the more slots you have, the more special spells you can put in your book. I thought they were literally memories, but no, they're little powers. Then he points to Scarlet and says that the assistant will teach them everything they need to know. Poor thing, she thought she'd have a little break at the start of this new class, but that's not the case. Outside, she says that the number of slots will depend on each person's individual ability. And when you have 2 slots or more, you can start combining spells. For example, if you put a level 1 with another level 1, you get a level 2. The math is easy. This type of combination is called magic binding, and the advantage of this method is that you don't need a slot to register this combination spell. She explains, it's going to be difficult for some of you, but there's also a way to combine 3 spells. Wow, look at her. Combining water, lightning, and fire, I think, or wind, I'm not sure. But I know she's saying the difficulty is very high and the chance of success is quite low. But at the same time, it creates very powerful spells with 3 attributes at once, and boom, she blasted at the big dummy, causing an explosion, and everyone is in shock. The nosy one asks what they think, and the protagonist is there, not caring much. Then she shows a list of all the level 1 specials and tells them to choose whatever they want. Or actually, not whatever they want, right? They'll have to buy from the magic shop. And if anyone is curious about magic binding, just talk to her. Suddenly, her expression is startled, wondering, how does he have 3 magic slots? Besides, hey, hold on, kid, are you going with that combination? Obviously, it's Caleb, wanting to know, why can't I? She, a bit embarrassed, says, it's not that you can't, it's just that it doesn't make much sense. Our boy wants a dust cloud, a heat wave, and a humidification. She then says, well, at the start, you can choose anything. There are many elements and strong special powers, so why do you want these 3? Besides, that darn humidification spell is utility. It just makes things wetter. It's useless. Caleb isn't very interested in the drama, but we already know something's coming that I can't quite imagine. Mine. He's going to wrap the person in a smoke cloud, heat that cloud, and wet that person. I also don't know what he's going to do here. Dollstream wants to know what it was, and Scarlet shows him the crazy combination. He, however, gives a wrinkled laugh, telling her to let him try. She finds it strange, wanting to know why try that, because he responds that the pursuit of knowledge is a wizard's greatest virtue. The magical university always welcomes methods that go beyond the ordinary. He's eager to see Caleb's results. The scene shifts to later at night, and I won't forget that Urnil is still being enslaved, while our boy is there, sitting, testing his combinations, very relaxed. Combining the smoke cloud with the heat wave creates a smoke explosion. What no one knows, however, is that this smoke explosion is much more powerful than a fireball. Besides, if you reverse the order of this fusion, you get a level 2 heat wave. Oh, and then with the last combination, you have the cumulonimbus. My goodness, the little rascal is all smiles, saying, since I tried to beat the game on God difficulty, I haven't used this build again. Cumulonimbus is a cloud that brings lightning, and now he's eager because there's something he wants to test with the hourglass. He also wants to buy another thunder wand to use one in each hand. However, he's exhausted for now, so all this will have to wait until tomorrow morning. He also has to get the most important thing, which I hope is Urnil, right? Here we are, the next day, unlocking, opening the cell. Okay, she's coming while the guy says he's a drug dealer and transporter, and now a slave, Urnil was called. It seems a client wants to buy her for an expedition in the labyrinth, so she better come quickly. Urnil, obviously, is in shock. The kind of person who buys a slave to take to a labyrinth isn't the best, especially since it's just to use as a meat shield to die. Besides, she believes that if she's taken to the labyrinth again, her chances of coming out alive are very low. She's there all like, oh my god, where's Caleb? Well, there he is, your Caleb, scoundrel, right in front of you. He's all ears, jumping up and down, wanting to know why he's there, why he's not at the university. The rascal says he'd never abandon a comrade who risked their life for him. Anyone would think he wasn't in the bathtub, enjoying the university, almost letting her be bought by someone else. But now he comes all chivalrous, saying, come on, Urnil, I'm going to make you a free person. He's walking with her on the street, saying there are several ways this can happen. First, he's going to collect the reward for Abyssin's body. She asks why he hasn't received it yet, and he says Clarence said it would be too risky to deliver it at that moment, so he's going now. That's because, you know, for her to be free now, she only needs 100 gold, and the reward for the body should be enough. The only point, however, is that for now, he wants to keep her as a member of his team to ensure she's not taken by another group. And obviously, he also wants her to go with him to the labyrinth. Not only will they be able to pay all the bills, but she will also finally become a free person. The rascal offers the bow, saying the choice is hers. Obviously, he made this whole sneaky plan because he wants her on the team. On the other hand, with trembling hands, he realizes she might be very scared. If eventually she's going to leave his team, it would be better if it happened as soon as possible. Urnil asks if he's really going to continue adventuring in the labyrinth. He says of course, and she says she might not be able to help. However, instead of just one more time, she wants to keep following following him and become a comrade. The rascal sighs in relief, knowing he won't lose the blonde, and says he just has to mention one more detail. He's already found another member for the team. Oh boy, now I want to know who it is, because he's thinking it's good she doesn't look too excited. We'll find out soon because, for now, our protagonist took her to the dormitory. What is this, boy? She's walking down the hallway, all dressed in green. The wretched otaku already put her in cosplay. Right, rascal. She's still all happy, not only because she'll be able to go to the labyrinth, but also because she'll be close to Caleb. The first thing she wants, however, is to take a hot bath. But when the door opens, she's startled. My goodness, the person he's going to bring is Backstab. Actually, right, Backstab's body. And he explains that he got a necromancy scroll from Isilov and, well, resurrected this guy in a way. Caleb tells Urnil to say hi to the friend, who's very happy to see her. But the poor thing already regrets it and wants to leave this place now. The story then tells about some things Professor Isilov wrote. 12 years ago, in the city of Soen, a massive eruption happened and countless lives were lost. About 3,000 monsters came out of the portals, and after many studies, it was discovered. The target of these creatures was a person named Henry, who was living in the southern region. He resisted as much as he could, but the body was found, and before leaving, he left the message. To all the possessed, beware of the magical university. The protagonist was confused. Why did this person leave a message that only the possessed could read? Oh, wait, it seems it's in a script that, in theory, people in this world can't read, but the protagonist can. And why did this guy leave this? Apparently, there's some problem with the magical university itself. However, this is strange since the place that suffered the most because of this eruption was the magical university. What the protagonist wants to know is whether these guys suffered because they were on the front lines or because once Henry was killed, they had another target. According to this hypothesis, there's a good chance that several identities here at the magical university are people who are also possessed. One thing he's sure of, he has to hide the fact that he's not from this world as much as possible. Meanwhile, Urnil wants to know if she can sleep with the boy tonight. Oh, come here, girl. Oh my goodness. But she came with a big zombie attached. Oh no, that's what she's afraid of happening. He says if she wants to stay there, there's a condition. You know, right, folks? He throws a bunch of scrolls on the floor, she gets scared, and the tough guy says there's a lot to test and that her help. I don't know what happened, but the scene shifted to Professor Meldini knowing about a certain project. Oh, they're telling him about the thing of tracking the soul of the possessed, and it's Isilov who's talking to him. Wow. Isilov is saying, can you believe the new sensation student said he's going to form his own group? Oh boy, it seems no one is on our protagonist's side, not even Isilov. And Meldini is asking, don't you find this friend a bit suspicious? His talent doesn't seem to be something that can be explained by the word genius. From what they said, he shot an ice arrow into the spider's chest before it exploded and spread the poison everywhere. Besides, having defeated Backstab with all that basic equipment isn't something explainable. Everything points to the fact that he's possessed, otherwise none of this would make sense. And you, Professor Isilov, have the obligation to verify this. Whoa, hold on. Maybe there's a fight brewing between the professors. Isilov says, what can I do in a situation like this? Are you telling me to lose such an incredible talent just because of these uncertain speculations? Meldini shakes his head, saying no, he doesn't want to go that far. It's just that he knows the university is short on wizards. However, they still need to be careful. But since that's the case, he'll leave the discussion for later. They don't want to have the bad luck of losing more than they've already lost, especially because of that one person, 12 years ago, who caused that catastrophe. Yikes. It seems there's a real mess going on between everyone. Isilov pulls up a chair, thinking he understands Meldini. They need the kind of person who will consistently enter the labyrinth and help the university. And at least Caleb volunteered and seems to want to recruit his own group, so he has no reason to oppose. We then see the protagonist put up a poster saying he's looking for a knight to go to the labyrinth, and it seems he's impressed that more people than he imagined are interested, which is strange, considering, you know, he's the ex-slave. Besides, Backstab, all worn out and zombified, is drawing a lot of attention. But considering that whoever joins the group will know about this, it's better not to hide it. Caleb clears his throat and announces that the goal of this expedition is to find Backstab's soul and revive him. And for that, he's looking for a warrior who can protect them on the front lines. And to start checking qualifications, the applicants had to lift this barrel. The problem for Caleb is that he can't see someone's status before they're in the group, so he'll have to create some tests. He says that after the first test, they'll check the skills. They were supposed to demonstrate any warrior skill they possessed. Then he asks who will be first. And the people there aren't very excited, with one wanting to know, oh, damn, is this kid doing all these tests here to join this failed group? Caleb sees the frustration, realizing that most there don't have skills. Warrior, archer, and thief are classes you can gain at the labyrinth's source. In other words, having skills is proof that you've already survived that place. Urnil is saying there that she also doesn't know how to use any skills, right? They're not exaggerating in their requests, to which he says it's fine, since she'll soon learn. Then a little dwarf shouts there, saying he has to stop acting superior just because he survived. But he gets a little hand on the shoulder. The lizard guy tells him to step aside. The guys recognize him as the paladin lizard from the Temple of Nathaniel. Normally, this guy hunts on the second floor, so why does he seem so interested? The lizard guy is shining with pure willpower, but the protagonist doesn't know if he wants a paladin from the Temple of Nathaniel, along with his friend there, who's under a necromancy spell. Suddenly, the lizard starts crying, asking, "Nathaniel, is this what you desire? I can't accept how pathetic that being is." Apparently, referring to backstab, and then the samurai guy says the expedition's goal is to deal with this resurrection business. He introduces himself as Hijikata, a swordsman and explorer of the third floor, also looking for a lost friend in the labyrinth. He wants to help resurrect Backstab because he thinks it will help him find information about his friend. Caleb thinks having a guy from the third floor would certainly be a great guarantee. The problem is that he'll soon leave his group and join another, which is a loss of experience. It's a very ambiguous situation because he's wanting to start training people who will stay with him for a long time, when suddenly, a bald guy slides in, asking if he can still make it to the interview. Hijikata looks back, "Hey monk, you better not want to compete with us," to which the monk responds that he has to join this team at any cost. Caleb is shocked. Monk is a rarer class than Paladin, and the monk is there begging for the chance to interview because Backstab was his comrade. He cries, saying it's his fault that he ended up like this. This guy was known as the strongest on the first floor. They stayed together for 3 years simply because his group dominated the first floor and it was comfortable for everyone. But everyone started thinking they were holding Backstab back. The pressure from other adventurers who were also interested in him made them not care much and even let Backstab go alone. Then, the group faced him, saying, "Hey, Backstab, you don't need to waste your time with us anymore. There's no reason for you to stay with us on the first floor. We'll always support you, but it's better for you to go to the second." When they told him that, Backstab accepted with a smile and said he'd miss everyone. Until 3 weeks later, they were ambushed by some bandits. Those bastards tried to trap them there, closing the gate. However, one of the group members managed to escape and asked the guild for help. Right at that moment, Backstab was there and jumped into the first floor portal to help. But by the time only the monk was left, he was about to die, and strangely, a rare phenomenon occurred. Another exit door appeared behind him. Boy, but Backstab was already completely insane, and the monk says it was on that day that Backstab changed completely. With the door opening, he started killing everyone, and he, scared to death, just ran away. And that's why he feels he has a greater reason than anyone to participate in recovering his soul. Caleb finds this a bit strange. Normally, these lost bosses, which is what, for example, Backstab became, only appear on the last levels. So, this business of everything happening out of nowhere seems a bit suspicious. The monk, however, steps forward and says that since that day, there hasn't been a moment he doesn't regret. If they had never sent Backstab to the second floor, they wouldn't have been ambushed, he wouldn't have had to go in alone, and none of this would have happened. He's there shaking the necromancer, Backstab, wanting to know if he sold his soul to the master of the labyrinth. Was that the price he paid to create that door behind the monk? Wow, is that the story? The monk falls to his knees, asking for forgiveness and begging. Suddenly, Hijikata changes his mind and says, "All right," then he chose the monk. The big lizard wants to know why. What kind of competition is this? Using emotional manipulation, he points to the barrel and says he'll have to break it to show his strength. Watching, Caleb thinks that the monk people usually make is the agile warrior, who doesn't have much strength. However, the only build that really works is the strength monk, and at that moment, the bald guy destroys the entire barrel. With that, the obvious happens, right? Shortly after, the little group is formed. The protagonist tells Amos, the monk, that he better get ready because soon they'll be heading out on an adventure. He says it's fine, but if he's going to be away for a long time, he has to discuss it with his wife. What? Married? Are you crazy? Our protagonist also tells Urnil to head to the dormitory with Backstab to sleep and rest while he goes to the magic university. There's something he needs to resolve before going to the labyrinth. As he enters the gate, he's thinking, if there's a cartel of possessed people inside this university, right now, the biggest risk factor is me. Not only did I succeed with an unusual combination of skills, but I also accepted Isalov's strange request. Besides, I'm forming a suspicious group with the monk in his 40s. With such an elaborate strategy, they must be convinced that I'm possessed. And to survive in this place, he has to make it clear that he's not a ticking time bomb or someone possessed, but rather just an incredible genius. And the person who's going to help him with this is the dear Professor Meldini, who's already shouting, asking, "Caleb, is it true that you created new combined spells?" The protagonist, calmly, says yes, he succeeded. The professor is shouting, drooling, saying it's weird. Most people fail, but he seems pretty lucky. The protagonist wonders if he should provoke this guy a little more. He says, "Yes, I got lucky. Not just a double combination, but I nailed a triple one." The professor loses it and shouts, saying he must be humiliating this school. This should be impossible unless he was blessed by the god of wisdom. Suddenly, Dalstream appears, telling Meldany to calm down. Maybe the boy is really blessed. Of course, Meldany doesn't want to believe it, saying that's a ridiculous joke. Even achieving a combination is difficult. Something triple like that is impossible unless he's possessed. Isolov wants to know where he thinks he's going, to which he responds that from now on, he's going to use lie detection magic and prove he's not possessed. If he's wrong, he'll apologize and compensate him however he wants. But if he's possessed, he'll be killed here and now. Man, Caleb is brave and tells him to stop stalling and get on with it, especially since it seems he's already reached his own conclusion. At that, Meldany says enough and activates the magic, when suddenly, Caleb says, "Isn't this what you wanted to hear from my mouth? I'm a person from another world who was possessed." But strangely, he activated the hourglass. I don't understand if people heard, but our boy is there staring, saying this bastard really has quite a personality. But he had no choice. He had to confront this guy in front of everyone. Now it's time for him to really find out if there's a cartel of possessed people in this university. This is the perfect chance to confirm all of this. From this situation, it was clear that Isolov seemed friendly, while the damn Meldany really resembled a demon. Dalstream is expressionless, so it's hard to know what he's thinking. But what expression is that on this Professor Enver? He seems strangely excited. He really needs to keep an eye on this guy. 3 seconds are left on the hourglass when he says it's time to start lying. After all, the Abyss Labyrinth is the greatest game of all and a masterpiece. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but with the end of the turn, he's suddenly electrocuted and falls to the ground. Wait, hold on. He fell to the ground as if he lied when he said he was possessed, and now people are going to help, but even I'm confused here. I'm just like Meldany, who's there trembling and saying, this boy really wasn't possessed, while Caleb is falling, apologizing, and saying that hurt like hell. What did he do? Did he electrocute himself? I don't get it, but we move forward a week, with Urnil asking if his body has finally recovered, and he says yes, he's fine. Wow, he was unconscious for 2 days straight after that. Luckily, he managed to profit quite a bit from it, because as agitated as Meldany was, he was also a professor who kept his word and obviously rewarded our boy. Not being seen as possessed anymore was perfect, but even better was receiving the Compass of Greed, a magical tool that allowed him to find a treasure chest in the labyrinth, and more skills are available as this item evolves. Caleb has no idea what other skills he'll gain, but a legendary item is always welcome. With that, he calls for Urnil, calls for Amos, and calls for Backstab. He asks if the 3 are ready because the time has come to return to the labyrinth. However, his expression is already different, wanting to know what's going on. There's a group in front, and he asks if Urnil can hear the conversation, to which she responds, they're saying, these guys don't seem so dangerous. Obviously, right, judging by our boys' group. Then a quirky girl turns around and says, hi, adventurers, do you have a moment to talk to me before entering this gate? Caleb, however, immediately realized that these guys are looters. They're to steal the equipment of beginners. The protagonist tried to be the first to arrive as soon as the gate opened. Precisely because of people like this, they're really going to be trouble. Someone from the other group asks what he has in his backpack, and he just wants to know why they're curious about it. The girl responds that she's very concerned about beginner adventurers. This labyrinth is full of looters, so, you know, if he wants, she can protect any expensive item he has. At that, Amos steps forward and says he doesn't think that's necessary. The group leader is quite intelligent, and they're strong enough to deal with these looters out there. The girl is shocked but turns around, saying that's fine, then. She gave the advice, but they don't want to listen. Caleb just watches as the guy's group enters the labyrinth before them. Shortly after, someone from the group is already asking, those guys from before, they were looters, weren't they? Caleb says, don't be afraid, Urnil. It's going to be hard for these guys to beat Amos in a direct fight. Not to mention that if they try to get close, you'll be the first to detect it. Before she can respond, though, someone shouts for help. The protagonist looks to the side and is already confused, and the girl is coming running, saying looters are following her. And here we go, right? She's crying, but I don't believe a thing. Caleb already has his wand ready, knowing this could be an attack, and asks why she thinks they'll believe her. She, however, says it was a surprise attack while they started the exploration. If it were in the game, Caleb would already kill now, but he has to observe the situation. He says, weren't you trying to steal our items just before? And the girl seems honest, saying she won't deny she had other intentions, but she also didn't imagine they would be attacked. She sincerely needs help. Urnil doesn't really know what they're going to do, and the protagonist is sure there's a possibility that what she's saying is true. But trusting anyone in this labyrinth here is insanity. And with that, he points the wand and says, if you don't want to die, I'm going to count to 3, and you'd better be gone. She tries to plead, but he's already counted 1, already counted 2, and she's trembling, saying that's fine, she's leaving. But please, don't kill her from behind. At that, Urnil hears something and tells Caleb that someone is coming from the front. A quartet is coming in the girl's direction, who now went towards Amos, saying people are coming. Caleb asks Urnil how many there are. She says there are 4. At the same moment, an arrow comes flying. But man, look, Amos in baseball mode sends it away. If there are 4, it can only be another group, and now Caleb knows what she said is true. Oh man, or not, right? Because the damn girl is smiling and already put the wand on his neck while asking what he thought of this little play. Amos turns to say something while she's activating a power there on his neck, and the protagonist is shouting, telling Amos that he's fine, telling him to look ahead. The good old hourglass comes into action, and everyone freezes. Caleb already thinks, that was close. Now I'm going to have to think carefully about each of my actions. This damn mage only acted as bait to get into our rear. That's because now she doesn't need to go through Amos and can neutralize both me and Urnil. The worst part is that she conjured a disruption ability. When casting a spell, it will be neutralized. But now that I'm neutralized, how are they going to deal with Amos? She can, for example, use paralysis on Urnil, who is weak in close combat, and then only Amos will be left to fight against this whole team. These bastards are taking advantage of the fact that backstab won't be of much use. Really, I should have acted without mercy and thrown a thunderbolt the second she appeared. But now there's no time to regret. If I make one more mistake, everyone dies here. One thing I discovered in the dormitory with Urnil is that the moment the hourglass turns, the cooldown time also begins. Obviously, 60 seconds in a battle is enough for everyone to die. But I have both the hourglass to buy time and also some scrolls I prepared. This time, it's the action effect reducer. I think this will remove the debuff she put on him, right? Kind of messing up the spells. And he warns that this damn girl will die in 3 seconds. With that, he activates his shock at the same moment the hourglass ends, and she is electrocuted beside him. Wait, from what I understand, the negative magic she put on him was cancelled both by using a thunderbolt, right? Because he has 4 actions, plus that scroll that reduces the duration of negative effects. I think that's it, right? She's falling there all worn out, while he says that thanks to her, he's now a little more determined. People like her only serve to die. The fool tries to say something, but wow, she took a level 3 dust explosion, and man, there must be nothing left. The friendly wolf is confused. They used a disruption magic, he shouldn't be able to cast anything. But 2 more wands and the other hourglass activate. For having killed her, he gained 2 more action points. He observes that there were 4 people coming because the dwarf in the background was a puppet caretaker. And now it's explained why Urnil heard the sound of 4 steps. He already gives the order for her to shoot the dwarf. At the same time, he's going to aim another smoke explosion at the knight. All actions were used, unlocked, and take another one in the middle of the mouth. At the same time, the arrow passes over the puppet and hits the dwarf's chest. The wolf, poor thing, didn't understand anything and took a hit in the mouth. It had to be the furry, right? Amos even sends a little prayer, while the dwarf is there asking for help. But man, Caleb just says he warned that everyone would die without mercy. He touched his forehead and says that from now on, he won't hesitate anymore. Take another lightning shock. Man, sometimes I think Caleb is going to be nice. But the boy fries the guys, right? Yeah, that's it. Next chapter. Campfire lit, everyone resting, and backstab back and forth. Urnil is a bit down because she's feeling stupid. She was useless, but she even slaps her own face, saying she has to focus. She's a comrade and there's no reason to be ashamed. She just needs to focus on the next fight. With that, Caleb is waking up, saying he was exhausted because that scroll has a side effect. Since they killed the looters, they got a lot of items that the guys looted from other people. Caleb, who wants to take everything, greedy. My god. But unfortunately, it's heavy, right? So they can't carry that much stuff. They'll use the equipment they can, the consumables they can carry. But unfortunately, right, it won't be everything. Picking up the scrolls, however, he's impressed. These damn looters have a lot of useful stuff, even a scroll to raise the dead. Not to mention there's also what seems to be a telekinesis wand. He activates it on the scroll, and it's kind of floating. With that, he says it's time for them to get ready and move on. But suddenly, Urnil seems startled and tells him to wait a second. She's hearing a strange sound coming from his pocket. The protagonist doesn't seem too scared and goes to get it. Obviously, it's that item Meldini gave, the compass that locates treasures. Amos seems excited, and the protagonist says yes, it's something good. But the priority, right, is to revive Backstab. So, for now, they'll leave that for later. Besides, he asks Urnil not to react like that to every sound. Wow, poor thing. She's useless. And when she tries to do something, she gets scolded. She says, "No, it's fine then. I won't talk about things like a water sound I'm hearing. I don't have to mention that, right?" Caleb changes his expression. "Wait, what do you mean, water?" And immediately, he wants to know where that is. The story explains, right, about those certain classes, like bandits, warriors, etc., that can awaken at the Blessing Fountain. Legends say that the ancient gods who were devoured by the labyrinths concentrated and formed these mythical places that give powers to adventurers. And here we are, face to face with the fountain. With that, Caleb already asks if the two there want to receive a good ability. Urnil is all excited, with her ears twitching, while Amos says he's tried several times but never received anything. Caleb, of course, knows there are certain conditions to gain an ability. It's not just about attributes. It also has to do with proficiency and the weapons you're using at the time of evaluation. With that, he asks if Amos tried to gain an ability with this weapon, and he says no. He then tells him to trust and try this time. He knows this guy has at least 15 strength and seems to have good proficiency. Amos then says he'll try since he's insisting. He dips his head in the water and comes out surprised, saying it's unbelievable, but he really receives something. Caleb asks what it was, and he says it's something called Gaia's Destroyer. The protagonist smiles and already says it's Urnil's turn. She's at the same level as him and has 13 agility. That should be enough. She takes her face out of the water and says she received the triple shot. She tells Caleb to try because he says mages don't receive anything from the fountains, but she's smiling, saying you never know. He scratches his chin, thinking, well, she's right, this isn't the game, especially since I don't know exactly the reason for the fountain, so who knows, it might work. Another one puts his face in the water, and at that moment, his expression changes. You use the fountain's blessing. You could see the stats and attributes, but the most interesting thing was the weapon, the hourglass of turns. Wow, with that, wisdom exceeded 10, and you can choose an introductory ability from the hourglass. Direction adjustment lets you move the arm or hands holding the wand without consuming actions, but you can't interact with objects. Time Switcher consumes 1 second of the hourglass to reduce cooldowns or remove a minute of a negative effect. Cooldown time, 1 hour. There's also the memory book editor. Wow, during your turn, you can open your memory book and swap spells. It costs 1 action point per slot you change. Man, so many abilities, dude. Active Mind Controller consumes 2 action points to command a lower level team member, regardless of trust level. If the command goes against what the person believes, they will enter a temporary state of madness after executing your request. Cooldown time, 1 hour as well. The protagonist is in shock, right? Took a deep dive and now has to think about it while waiting underwater. He decides to go with the most obvious and easy to use. He chose the direction adjustment just to be able to move his arm and the wand's there. Yeah, I really think being able to move without spending an action point is strong, right? But that book one seemed good. Meanwhile, his friends say they thought the guy was going to drown, but he says it's all fine. At the same moment, he activates the hourglass and starts testing it, moving his arm back and forth with 0 points being spent. He then tells his friends it's time to get back to the adventure, and the plan this time is just to follow Backstab. Will he follow his own soul? I don't know, but suddenly, Amos makes a strange face, and Urnil asks what's up. He shows a talisman in his hand that was given by his wife, and the curious one wants to know how they met. He explains they were part of an adventurer group, and she was the one who organized the group with Backstab. She understands how indebted he is to this person, and that's why she allowed him to join this mission, even without much reward. Urnil says she seems amazing, and he agrees, saying that's why he has to come back alive. Caleb is there thinking, oh my god, why did the monk say the perfect line for someone who dies at the end? Meanwhile, Backstab seems to have a strange reaction and starts walking all crooked. Urnil asks what he's following, but he falls to the ground, all confused. Caleb smiles. Looks like this guy was instinctively reacting to the presence of his soul nearby. He says it must be the space they're looking for. Floor 1.5. Urnil is a bit skeptical. Is there a floor 1.5? Amos also says he's heard the rumor, but is it really true? Caleb says yes, and that's where Backstab's soul will be, and the entrance to this place has to be over there. Then, Urnil, startled, warns that he stepped on something, just as everything starts to shake, and Amos says things seem like they're going to collapse. Caleb, however, is smiling, saying that thanks to Urnil, they found the exit much easier. Smoke rises from the ground, and then a staircase appears in front of them. Oh, but there's a little portal right down there, right? I've already noticed that portals are never a good thing. The protagonist, however, is eager to visit this floor 1.5. As they passed through the portal, Urnil was quite surprised. On the other side, they found what seemed to be an abandoned city. She was taken aback, while Caleb thought it looked exactly like in the game. Her ears perked up, but this time, she couldn't hear any sounds. Caleb then mentioned that from now on, they not only had to move quietly, but they also couldn't make any noise to avoid being heard by the sentinels. Urnil wanted to know who these sentinels were, and Caleb explained that they were a certain group of monsters that existed on floor 1.5 and moved in large groups. However, they mostly stayed near the tents, and as long as you didn't make noise, you wouldn't be detected. The team continued, speaking softly, as Caleb explained that battles there could happen out of nowhere, and any fight would be a significant disadvantage for them. The goal was to rescue Backstab's soul without any combat in return. Caleb had played this region countless times, so theoretically, he couldn't get lost. Suddenly, he announced that they had finally arrived at the place where souls rest. As he approached the door, he noticed it was exactly as he remembered. He began to open it, noting that there was no danger so far. Inside the room, there were countless small jars on the floor, and Urnil asked what they were. Caleb explained that they were soul urns, but most of them were empty. Amos immediately wanted to know how they would find Backstabs among all of them. Caleb explained that it would be one that didn't draw much attention, like the green one on the shining throne. However, Caleb asked them to be patient because the moment that urn was emptied, the creatures would come running. So, they first needed to take it to floor 1 and then resurrect the boy. But then, Urnil asked them to wait and pointed to the side, showing that there was another one shining as well. What would they do now that there were two? Amos commented that a second ago, the other one wasn't there. He quickly concluded, wait a minute, doesn't this mean someone else was captured? Caleb paused to think that something was wrong. He was the strongest on floor 1F. The labyrinth master shouldn't be after someone else's soul, but Urnil already mentioned that something was running towards this place. The protagonist was sure someone had died on 1.5, and that's why this soul had arrived there. The scene shifted to another group, with someone telling a certain Remus to run, as they needed shelter in that cathedral. The door opened, and the two groups faced each other. The protagonist saw the lizardman again, who was yelling, wanting to know how they entered such a dangerous place and left the door open. Caleb realized that this fool didn't know it had become dangerous because he had appeared. The lizardman pointed out that there were a bunch of strange monsters watching, and they should prepare for a fight. The protagonist noticed that this guy had brought everyone along, but then he asked, so, what are you doing here? Come on, speak up. The lizardman said he was sent to the church to hunt in the labyrinth and ended up there. In other words, their meeting was a revelation from Nathanael, who wanted them to overcome the challenges together. He knew the moment he saw Caleb that they had a divine plan connecting them. Someone told the annoying Bernard to shut up. It was a blonde guy at the door, saying they needed to raise the barrier quickly before everyone there died. Bernard activated some magic and placed a protection circle on the wall, saying they would win the fight against the demons inside that place, and ordered Caleb to support his team. The protagonist was furious because now, unfortunately, he couldn't get out of this mess, but it was okay. He would survive this disaster and deal with that guy when they got out of the labyrinth. He then said, Bernard, you'll have to follow my instructions. The lizardman wanted to know why, and Caleb explained that it was because he was the one who brought the creatures and caused this mess. Bernard replied that when he asked nicely like that, it made sense. Since they were the ones who brought the creatures to this place, they would follow Caleb's orders. Caleb immediately thought that the plan had changed. They would have to resurrect Backstab here and now. This was because, in the state they were in, they wouldn't be able to escape. First, he used the scroll Isolov had given him for eternal rest. Now, they just had to protect him for a minute while the necromancy activated. He then told Urnil to grab the jar, as he would lower it with telekinesis. At the same time, he was calling the guys at the door, asking them to quickly tell him all the abilities they had so he could devise a strategy. Poor, misunderstood elf, right? Normally, elves are supposed to be beautiful, but this one, well, not so much. And obviously, he wasn't keen on obeying Caleb, saying they were more than experienced. They would follow the orders of their group leader, Bernard, and not his. Caleb said that was fine, so he asked Bernard what the strategy was for today. Bernard replied, the strategy is a direct frontal attack. We defend the door. The protagonist immediately responded, wait, wasn't that the strategy that made you lose one of your members? Bernard and the group, a bit embarrassed, kind of admitted it. Caleb then said that if they followed his instructions, not only would he promise they would win, but they would also be able to revive their friend. First, he said he would prove that what he was saying was true. When someone dies on floor 1.5, their soul automatically goes to an urn. Since they knew which urn was Backstab's and it had started glowing recently, it could only be their friends. The guys seemed a bit skeptical, but Caleb assured them they could trust him. Besides, the resurrection would take place right there between floors 1 and 2. Bernard seemed doubtful, saying that a resurrection like that in the middle of the dungeon couldn't happen. The ugly elf, however, said that if what Caleb was saying was true, he would follow any order. He then mentioned that he had the abilities of piercing shot and ricochet shot. The barbarian had heavy charge and long jump. Basically, the guy was human, right? The most basic abilities I've ever seen. However, they were all pleading to please save their comrade. Caleb said he understood and mentioned that the barrier would fall at any moment. It was time for them to start the fun, and now he wanted to see. Oh, disaster. Not before the next chapter started in the church with someone giving Bernard a mission, telling him he had to enter the labyrinth immediately and investigate rumors about soul preservation. The church wouldn't spare any resources, so he couldn't fail. Obviously, he accepted. But now, back in the chaos, he was wondering why Nathanael was giving them such difficult challenges. Caleb knew that not only would they be attacked head-on, but the numerical difference was absurd. However, if they managed to hold on, something specific would appear. He then instructed the strongest to perform a sequence of actions on their backs to help them climb to the next floor. Urnil and Remus were to protect the relics. Shortly after, the strong ones announced they had managed to create the path. He then told everyone to move away because he was going to blow up the ceiling, and there was an explosion of dust. A crater opened, and he told everyone to start climbing, literally, to the ceiling of that place. The group began to climb, and Caleb called for Amos and Bernard to come quickly. However, just then, they heard the sound of the door breaking and the Dementors entering. A group of 4 immediately headed towards the 2. Amos told Caleb to climb first, as they would buy time, and Bernard activated the Guardian's shield to draw attention. Amos was swinging his staff, pushing everything away, but boy, about 80 creatures had already entered the room. Caleb and the group were there, looking. What, guys? Come on, Urnil, shoot some arrows. Caleb cast some spells. He shouted at the two idiots, telling them to stop advancing and retreat as quickly as possible. They were a bit confused about why, but Caleb knew something was about to arrive. Then, a hand hit the entrance, and Bernard was startled. It was a monster more peculiar than threatening. And that was the sanctuary's caretaker. At that moment, he extended his staff, and all the creatures that had been defeated began to be healed. And Caleb said, that's why it was so difficult to deal with this place. This recovery magic could restore all the sentinels to full health. He then told the barbarian to go down and help the others buy as much time as possible. The barbarian said that was fine. If it was just about buying time, he would do his best. Meanwhile, upstairs, they were still waiting for Backstab to resurrect, and Urnil came running towards them, saying she would help. Caleb said that was fine, but she should return safely. Remus was praying for everything to work out, while Caleb thought he would have to rely on her this time. Because the mission's success depended entirely on her. She ran off alone with a little jar. We then saw that a bit earlier, Caleb had warned them about the caretaker, a creature that not only had undead recovery abilities but also had a scent that caused nausea and lowered resistance. They needed to stay as focused as possible. However, despite all these warnings, Bernard was struggling. The boy was all dizzy. Meanwhile, the barbarian was swinging his axe, wanting to know how long they would have to hold on. And the problem was the same as always. They killed, but the caretaker raised his staff and the creatures were back. Once again, they came forward, but now Bernard was all disoriented, unable to react properly. The barbarian told the fool to stop getting distracted, managed to protect him from the attack, and said they were far from finishing this fight, so he couldn't start passing out now. I still want to know why our dear Caleb didn't throw a sequence of hourglasses, right? I imagine he's saving it for a crucial moment. It's the only thing I can think of, right, to explain why. The brawl was ongoing, with Amos spinning his big staff, hitting all the creatures in the face. Bernard couldn't understand how this monk didn't seem to be affected. He asked how he managed to withstand the smell. Amos replied that it was simple. On Mount Dalai, he trained to never be affected by the distractions of the world. Bernard seemed to believe that, but it was definitely a skill. Meanwhile, once again, the caretaker aimed his skill, and Caleb told them to be careful. It was the usual resurrection happening. Amos went forward again, activated the Gaia explosion he got from the source, raising a barrier and pushing all the creatures away. Bernard and the barbarian were in shock, wanting to know what skill that was, which evaporated everything in one hit. This guy didn't seem to be just any monk from floor 1. No way. Meanwhile, outside, Remus saw a flare explode in the air and informed the protagonist, who immediately ordered everyone to retreat while celebrating that Urnil had succeeded. The scene shifted to her, scolding a bald guy, telling him to get up and start moving. When Caleb told everyone to return, it was the moment he said he would have to buy time, so he used the hourglass. The dust explosion didn't have a large enough area of effect to take out all the sentinels. In other words, there was only one solution. Use 4 of the same skill at once. Done. Problem solved. The entire ceiling of the room began to explode. Even the boss looked like a fool, not understanding. Remus, watching that, also found it strange, and everything started to crack, with stones raining down on the boss, the creatures, dust everywhere. Bernard was confused too, but Caleb just told them to take advantage and climb because it was the only chance they would have. The barbarian called for the lizardmen, and they ran, but more souls were already emerging from the smoke. They got hit in the mouth and fell to the ground. Bernard turned once more and told the monk to go ahead, but he said no. Oh, disaster. No tank wants to stop tanking. Now it's complicated, right? How are you going to escape? And obviously, Amos didn't want to give up because he was remembering Backstab and everything that happened, and he vowed that from now on, he would never run away again. It was forbidden for him to leave any comrade behind. Bernard was there, unsure of what to say, while Amos told him to go ahead, that he would hold them off there. The lizardman realized he wouldn't be able to change this guy's mind and said that was fine. Then, he left, saying that the damn Amos was the best vanguard he had ever seen. With that, he made a poorly drawn leap towards the ceiling. Meanwhile, Amos charged forward once more, but a lightning bolt struck in front of the creatures. The protagonist told the fool to climb up too, man. However, amidst the stones, the damn staff rose once again. The most obvious thing happened. The damn caretaker raised it again and brought all the creatures back. He warned Amos that it was the last chance he would have to escape, man. The scene then went to Urnil, who was fleeing with the bald guy, telling the damn girl to slow down. She said there was no time, but he insisted that she had to make time for him, who had just returned from the world of the dead. She said no way, man. When he was resurrected, she threw a bunch of potions, so he could start walking right away. This was because if they didn't arrive quickly enough, the entire group of both parties could end up being killed. Back in the chaos, Remus was shooting arrows, while the protagonist cast lightning and Amos tried to climb. Go, lizardman, grab the staff. The lizardman grabbed it with force and saved the bald guy. Or not, because when he looked back, there was someone else trying to grab him. The damn guy even let out a weird laugh. Remus kept saying they wouldn't give up now, shot another arrow towards the mask. But the damn guy saw it and managed to catch it in midair with his mouth. Bernard told him not to give up, that they were almost there, and kept pulling. However, Amos was running out of strength in his arms. The grip was starting to slip, and he said it was too late. It was okay. It was better to abandon them there and move on. But then, the protagonist told him to use the damn dagger already, and someone activated a magical throw. The little knife hit the boss's forehead squarely, and with that, Amos began to be pulled while the monster fell, screaming and exploded on the ground. Upstairs, someone praised the guy's work and said he was back. Oh, look at the rascal. Backstab was back. Everyone was like, it's Backstab, while he himself was like, what's going on? Guys, tell us. Someone shouted to Stab, and I did, but I have no idea what's happening. He was looking around, all confused, wanting to know what place this was. However, obviously, Amos jumped and hugged him. It's the romance of the bald guy and the redhead. He gave him a nosedive somewhere, and Backstab felt the pain. The human was crushing his bone, almost killing him again, while someone called for Caleb. Urnil was beside him, saying they had finally arrived, and the bald guy thanked the boy. Everyone was happy that Aston was back. The barbarian was already crying, also emotional, while Aston wanted to know why they didn't run away, why they were there, wanting to save him. Finally, Caleb interrupted the drama, saying it was nice that everyone was happy, but this wasn't over yet, especially considering that the more they talked, the more they would attract the Sentinels. He then proceeded to explain the rest of the plan and needed to ensure that Urnil and Aston listened too. The distance between the cathedral ceiling and the ground was 7 meters, plus 30 meters from the ground to the portal. Jumping from up there would be suicide. The monk and the lizard would definitely break their heels. Urnil, apparently, was listening to everything with her perked up ears and passing it on to the bald guy. And Caleb explains that what they need to do is suppress the Sentinels and the caretaker so they can't act. At that moment, they take the opportunity to run through the gate as fast as they can. But to do this, the protagonist will have to cast an extremely difficult spell, which will take some time. While he's in the middle of explaining, one of the creatures starts coming down from the roof. The barbarian just turns around, saying it doesn't matter, they have no choice anyway, and swings his axe. The whole gang is starting to climb, and he says he'll try to hold off those who are coming up. Caleb, however, tells him to save his strength for now because Bernard and Backstab will handle things up there. Backstab says, "Hey buddy, you're not my leader." Everyone tells him to shut up, fool. Meanwhile, Amos announces that this guy is now the new leader of the group. Remus, however, doesn't believe he really has a way to deal with the entire group. The protagonist explains that he will use an area electricity spell to paralyze them for a while. During this time, they'll have a chance to escape. He then calls out to Urnil and tells her to run to the gate with Aston and wait for them. She passes the message to Aston and adds that they will close the cathedral with an earth spell. With that, the two go ahead, and Caleb notices the hourglass cooldown is ending. Everyone is trying to form an aura, and he goes up to the roof, saying that this damn caretaker is really troublesome. This guy is smart. Instead of forcing himself on the roof for everyone to die, he's waiting for them, creating a perimeter with all the creatures in the area to block their escape. However, it's a shame because his script will be turned upside down. Phew, they changed that ability to Thundercloud, thank goodness. Along with it, the protagonist will throw the hourglass. Thundercloud is a summoning ability that creates a strong storm, 15 seconds of cooldown and 30 seconds of duration. Wait, isn't this a bit unbalanced? Okay, I think the numbers are wrong. Every 3 seconds, it strikes an extra lightning bolt on enemies already hit. The protagonist has already cast the first one, and he's already cast the second. Wow, is he going to cast 4 of these? Looks like it. 17 seconds. 15 seconds, he casts another one. Oh, he's inside the hourglass. Casting, waiting for 15 seconds to pass, casting, you know. It seems like it's going to be all 4 energies because the entire sky is already black. All points were used, and the turn ended. Wow, but he's also going to use that new ability, where when he kills, he gains 2 more points, I think. Another storm. Oh my, I don't know how, but in total, he's going to cast 7. Damn, the 7. But of rank 3, instantly, the whole sky is black. It starts raining on the boss's head, on the creatures, and everyone is kind of confused. Wait, where did this come from? How did a cloud appear so suddenly? The protagonist, meanwhile, casts the first lightning bolt, and thunder strikes in the middle of everything. From afar, Aston and Urnil are watching this, and she immediately tells him to use the magic totem, as that was the plan. The guy is casting, but he's confused. How is a first-floor mage casting something this big? Really, the rumors about him being an enchantmentless caster were true. The poor guy, on the other hand, to raise these walls, has to chant the Bible. But, oh my, speaking of the protagonist, you also conjured a wall around everything. Aston says it's done, and Urnil comments that theoretically, now, the barbarian should jump through it. He thinks it's kind of impossible, but oh, right, the barbarian's ability was the big jump. Now I remember. And there he goes, crossing over, already on their side. The protagonist, from afar, sees that, and everything worked out. He then says, Amos, just finish it the way I explained. He says okay, he'll do his best. The protagonist tells Bernard to activate the power of radiance. He obeys, and Amos gains 3 more strength. I thought this was one of the few ways to make it work. He grabs Amos's back and sends him flying. The poor guy heads towards the barbarian, who manages to catch him in midair. Oh my, is he going to have to throw Bernard? Bernard says he counts on him and asks him to hold onto this equipment. Backstab asks, wait, if your magic is so strong, why didn't you just kill the creatures from the start? The protagonist tells him to pay more attention. Maybe he can handle the sentinels, but the caretaker is completely different. He must already be hearing the pounding on the wall, which won't last much longer. As soon as he gets out of there, the sentinels will be revived, and they need to escape now. Besides, his magic will only last a little longer, and when it ends, it's over for them. The moment he passes, the two have to follow him using the shadow jump at the same time. Amos says, okay, he understands. And now the protagonist is there, about to be thrown. Thinking this is scarier than he imagined, he was thrown too. The barbarian has his arms open, telling the boy to come for a hug. With that, the scene shifts to Urnil, happy, saying it was a perfect plan and it seems like everything will work out. The protagonist says no, they still have to rescue Amos and Backstab. Up top, Backstab is saying, dude, where did you find this crazy mage? I have so many questions, but first, we better get out of here. Amos says, wait, Backstab, when we get out of here, why don't we join Caleb's group? Considering your past as the tower chief who was killing everyone, it's unlikely anyone will accept you, especially since the dungeon mark is still on your forehead. Backstab looks a bit confused, while Amos says Caleb is the only one who will accept him. He says he'll think about it, but first, they need to get out of there. Amos, however, shouts, saying that's exactly why he's saying this now. He has to join Caleb's group. The redhead is like, dude, what's up with the bald guy? Is he getting senile? Old man? Then, he activates the shadow step and both appear down below. Caleb says that finally, everyone escaped, and at the same time, the wall bursts. He states the obvious, right, dude? We have to get out of here. Run to the gate, you rascals. Everyone crosses the gate, and the whole gang is on the other side. The group is quite large. Urnil, all cute, celebrating, and the ugliest elf on the planet, smiling crookedly. The elf and the guy enter all embarrassed, saying they didn't think they'd get out alive. And everyone admits it wouldn't have worked if it weren't for Caleb. Bernard is in shock. He can't believe Caleb came up with this whole plan just by listening to their abilities once. Usually, people say, wow, the protagonist came up with a great plan, and it's a mess, but this plan was really tough. And the most important thing for Bernard is that they managed to prove the existence of soul preservation. Aston, who came back to life, is the living proof of that. But on the other hand, he realizes it wasn't his group that made this mission succeed. In fact, what did he contribute? If it weren't for Caleb, everyone would have died. For a second, he thought the god Nathaniel had guided them to save Caleb, but in reality, he was guided to learn something. To learn about his limitations. The guy is all mentally exhausted now. Oh man, the real limitation of life is Amos having a sore shin. Wow, it's not just pain. What is this? There's a crater. Dude. Even Caleb is in shock, wanting to know what the hell this is. Oh, Caleb recognizes it. Actually, it's the Decay Ray, a Tier 3 necromancy ability that will decompose in the person's heart until they die. Oh, it was at that moment that the damn caretaker grabbed his leg. He asks why the wretched Amos didn't say anything until now. Oh, now it's explained why, he said. Backstab had to join Caleb's group, right? Because he already knew he was going to die. Amos says there's not much to do, while Backstab is holding him, telling him to get up. He was fine on the roof. We have the ugliest elf asking Bernard if there's anything he can do, being a paladin. But he replies that a third-tier necromancy is far beyond the healing he possesses. Amos takes a pendant and tells Caleb he has a request. It was to deliver this talisman to his wife, and apologize for promising to return but not being able to. Wow. But before the protagonist can take it, bam, his arm hits the ground. Oh my, Urnil says his heartbeat is getting weaker. Bernard has already given up. Everyone is praying for the guy. Caleb, however, is not. He's there thinking. He's not dead yet. I can't let Amos go like this. I need to remember all the items we've gotten so far. He remembers the soul barrel. And then the crazy guy has an idea. Immediately, he grabs Amos and tells Backstab to follow him. Before he stops breathing, he needed to pass through the gate, and he throws himself to the other side, falling with the bald guy. At least the guy was still kind of agonizing, so he was alive. The bad part is that all the spirits and demons are staring. The bad part is he has to deal with this. The good part is that Amos's soul was going into a jar, and from the background, you could see the jar was already glowing. Caleb is sure that's what they want, but at the same time, Urnil and Backstab already cross over, wanting to know the plan. He says he's going to recover Amos's soul, and Backstab says he's going to do something, but he interrupts, telling him not to use anything. First, they needed to stop these guys who were advancing. 13 seconds still on the hourglass. The first creatures advance and take a dust explosion in the face. The bastards pass through the smoke, take an arrow to the head, and there are 9 seconds left when he throws a lightning bolt at another. The problem is that with each passing second, the creatures were getting stronger, and then someone shouts for Caleb. It's Bernard, the 4 ugliest years, entering and saying they won't let him die. The protagonist smiles, thinking it's funny that he's happy to hear this damn lizard talking. And then the brawl begins while the boss is standing there. 4 seconds, 3 seconds. Caleb is sure this plan is kind of insane, and normally, he would never risk his life with such low chances. However, this was the only solution, and the dual wand was drawn at the same time the hourglass returned. Then, Caleb tells Backstab to use the ambush jump when he gives the signal to approach the caretaker and steal his staff with a theft, and then use the shadow step to return. He says it's kind of impossible because the chance of theft is very low, but Caleb just tells him to obey. The hourglass starts, and he activates telekinesis to affect the jar inside the thing. The problem is that it's so far away that the closer you get, the more action points you spend. He's getting close when he's at 2, but finally, it's when he's at 1. And he says that Amos protected the group countless times, and now it was his turn. Oh, what is this? He grabbed the little jar, saying he'll never let him die. Is he in love with the bald guy? At the same time he grabs it, he gives the order for Urnil to shoot a lightning arrow. The last point is used, and she starts charging the bow, while the protagonist tells Backstab to go. And right then, the arrow passes through all the creatures, hitting the boss square in the chest. Backstab appears beside him, uses the theft ability, manages to grab the staff, shadow steps, and is far away. The protagonist then tells everyone to return, and he slips into the portal. Wow, he stole everything from the big guy. Did he farm a big staff like that too? The protagonist is there exhausted, asking if anyone else took any kind of fatal attack and isn't saying. Bernard, however, steps forward and asks, right, what are they going to do? They don't have the most important thing, which is the resurrection scroll. The only way to bring Amos back is to run out of the labyrinth now, but the chances are low. Caleb, however, knows that the reliquary where the soul is kept shatters the second he leaves the labyrinth. And then it shows the item Meldony gave, saying he has a slightly better idea than that. Every secret labyrinth has a treasure room. Inside this room, you have, right, a treasure, where there are great chances of finding what an adventurer desires most. Interesting, huh? Will he want more of this? Wow, yes, dude. He found the resurrection scroll. Bernard is kind of in shock, right? Because this isn't a plan that makes sense. How deep was this damn kid's knowledge of the labyrinth? Caleb, however, says that now everything is ready. Wow, but it was a quick plan, right? As soon as the bald guy fell, he already came up with all this, man. And there you go. First, taking a rise. To heal Amos, first, he has to turn him into a zombie. Then, he uses the undead restoration with the staff and then activates eternal rest, which transforms him, right, just like Backstab was. With that staff, he removes the necromancy from the human body, and then he uses the resurrection scroll, and the bald guy stands up in front of everyone. The protagonist hands over the necklace, saying he's the one who will deliver it. A while later, Bernard extends his hand, saying he learned a lot today. When the boy returns to the city, he asks him to please visit the temple. He will certainly be rewarded for helping complete this mission. Aston is there. Wow, Caleb, I owe you my life. I don't even know how to repay you, dude. I'll have to repay with my life. Caleb says it's not that much, and then Bernard and the group seem to be leaving. The protagonist thinks, oh damn, those bastards caused an absurd chaos that messed everything up for us. But in the end, they also went there to help. And thanks to them, I got something really good. So I'll let this one slide. Urnil asks if they're leaving already, because he says no, they haven't finished collecting the treasures yet. She finds it a bit strange, saying that everything there is kind of trash. Amos steps forward and says that's a beginner's opinion. Sometimes, hidden in the trash, you can find some treasures. Caleb thinks he went too far, but yes, there must be something okay. He starts rummaging in the chest, tossing some pots aside, and suddenly finds something interesting. A blank scroll. An item on which you can write any spell, and then use it, right? Wow, there was even a dagger there that looked interesting. Wow, the chest was packed? Dude, what is this? Unfortunately, to use it, it has to go through an analysis process, but it might be good for Backstab. Additionally, there was also a relic of a coin. This usually appears with the loot, so there's nothing strange about it. However, this design was a bit different from what he imagined. Then, he remembers that back when they reached floor 1.5, the destroyed city had a banner with this symbol. As in the original game, this was a tiny item. He never noticed this similarity. However, this tells him that maybe all the items in this chest are from that village. The plan is to show this to Professor Isolov to see what that guy's reaction is. With that, he tells the group that the farm is over. It's time to leave. He hands something to Urnil, saying it's a little gift. She doesn't understand, and the protagonist says it must be weird for Backstab to keep staring. Wait, is Backstab's weakness the elf girl's thigh? Now I'm confused. Oh, no, wait, they're really talking about her hair. And he says he doesn't have a problem with hair, only when the guy is food. She's confused. Dude, I think everyone's sounds crazy here. I think it's much more likely he was really looking at her thighs and now he's covering it up, that rascal. Anyway, the hair is tied up and now they ask what his real name is. He says they took a while to ask the name of the brave one. It really is Backstab. Urnil laughs, curious about what kind of mother would name her child that, and he explains that he legally changed it on purpose. After the joke, time passes and he's leading the way, warning about some traps, so it's best to be careful. Caleb is thrilled because having a bandit in the group makes traveling easier. This is because he has a skill called Keen Eye, which allows him to notice almost everything. Even better, his sharp ears also warn the protagonist to be cautious, and at that moment, 2 goblins are approaching from behind. Wow, did he already shoot 2 arrows? The protagonist is in shock, like, what just happened? And the sharp ears don't stop. They already point out the path. Caleb comments, wow, it seems like I don't have to do anything in this group anymore. And with that, we're in the city of Soren, and the gate to the first floor is opening. It's Bernard's group, everyone coming out, smiling, happy. He's there talking about needing to inform Madanelle about the mission, but for some reason, there's a girl there. Right, nothing suspicious. Right after, the bell rings again, and Bernard turns around, like they just left. Who else is coming out? Oh, who could it be? Right, you idiot. The group that was behind you, right? 1 + 1 is 2, damn it. They're in shock, wondering how they got out so quickly. The protagonist says it was easy. They found an exit right after. Oh, that girl who was waiting? It's her, Austin's wife, who is all emotional, runs over and gives him a hug, actually. Wait a minute, a monk dating a nun? Can that happen? Or maybe she's just a peasant, right? That 14th century look. He's all emotional, saying he survived thanks to a miracle. Next scene, we're at the slave department, and finally, dear Urnil is a free woman in this world. It only took 27 chapters. She celebrates, telling Caleb she can do whatever she wants, but he says no. She still has some debts to pay because the clothes she's wearing and the food she's been eating these days, he paid for all of it. But instead of complaining, she says she doesn't care. If she's stuck with him, she doesn't mind being a slave. How cheeky. Caleb feels a bit embarrassed, thinking he said that to tease her, but now he's feeling like trash. Backstab, however, is there laughing, saying it's funny how she thinks she's something, being a 75-coin slave. She tells him to go to hell and says she was worth 3,000, actually. Backstab keeps laughing at her until Caleb comes up behind him and asks if he thinks he's a free person. He turns around, confused, and the protagonist explains that he's a monster classified as a boss. At this moment, he's not even considered human. Not to mention that even if he's reclassified as human, he's still listed as deceased. With that, the poor guy is left there desolate, and Urnil starts scolding him, saying it's better to be a free slave than someone considered dead by everyone. They keep arguing until the scene shifts to another part of the city, with someone saying it's crazy, he really came back to life. The protagonist looks around, wondering why the rumors spread so quickly. My goodness, there's a huge crowd around the group. Backstab is a bit confused, wanting to know what happened. And then Hajikata shows up, wanting to ask where his soul was. The protagonist doesn't hide anything and says it was between the floors, in a place called 1.5. And now everyone is in shock because they've heard of the floor between floors, but no one comes back alive. So how are these guys here? Caleb realizes that it was never a secret, just considered impossible. Some of Hijikata's friends were listening as he says that once, when he was on the 2nd floor, he ended up going down to 1.5 and almost died. They must have been lucky to come back alive like that. Look who's there, Burton is celebrating, saying it's unbelievable. He went to 1.5 and survived that 100 sentinels. It's even crazier that he managed to conjure an absurd sequence of lightning storms. The protagonist realizes that everything that happened in that mess has already leaked. The scene changes again, and now it's Isolov. Hey kid, isn't this the boss's staff? The protagonist says, yes, it has undead restoration. The poor guy can't believe it because that's a rank 3 necromancy spell. Caleb imagined this reaction. Even items with rank 2 specials are rare, so something of this level is even more terrifying. The guy falls into a chair, saying, I imagined you'd succeed, but it would take a few months. I was even planning to apologize for giving you a rank B mission, but not only did you go there and defeat the boss, but you also managed to bring this item and backstab. This is yours, kid. Make good use of it. Thank goodness. I thought you were going to steal it, you bandit. The guy also tells the protagonist to choose the reward he wants. The door opens suddenly, with that scoundrel Meldini entering, saying he heard the great news. He knew the kid would make it. He just talked to Bishop Yahello at the Nathaniel Temple, and it seems everyone is shocked by what Caleb did. Isilov tells him to share, and he boasts, saying, everyone is praising the students of our academy, and now those guys at the temple realize they can't be our rivals. He takes the protagonist's hand and tells him to recount everything that happened there. Meanwhile, at the Nathaniel Temple, someone asks for a proper explanation. The priest in front says, Your Eminence, as I just said, hit by a rank 3 necromancy spell, the monk was taken to 1.5, and his soul was preserved in the reliquary. Right after, they went to the treasure room and found a resurrection scroll and revived him the same way they did with Backstab. This cardinal of the Nathaniel Temple is Servan, who is somewhat skeptical. It was hard to believe that a first-year mage would do something like that. The guy scratches his chin and says, it's really strange. In a situation like this, how did he come up with such an unusual solution? Servant agrees. Necromancy is something everyone considers relatively wrong, and most of the church is against it. But apparently, it was one of the ways the kid managed to resurrect these people. Which for them in the church is a problem because until now, the only place that could resurrect was the church, obviously, because they make the scrolls. But with this event, the balance of power changes completely since, in theory, now any adventurer can be resurrected without them. He asks about Bernard, and Yahello says he seems a bit demotivated. He said that without that mage, his partner wouldn't have been revived, they wouldn't have escaped, and they would have been killed there. For him, he was useless and basically wants to give all his reward to the people who saved him. Servant says seeing Bernard with such a broken heart hurts him, and he asks Yahello to take good care of him. But before that, he wants to know, right? What's the name of that mage? He wants to keep an eye on the things he's going to cause. And look, there's Caleb arriving, with Urnil saying she was worried. The protagonist is angry that damn Meldini took up so much of his day. Urnil asks if he's okay, and he says yes, but there's already someone else in front saying they were waiting for him. It's Clarence, Man, who says they're going to have a banquet today to celebrate all the success they've had. I'm still very suspicious of this guy, Man. I'm thinking, my bets? Tell me what you're betting at this moment. I think he's an isekai too, but he kind of wants to keep all the power to himself, you know? So he's willing to kill the other isekai. What do you guys think? I think so. At this moment, however, he's saying that as the savior of his brother, he wants to honor the kid. Caleb thanks him and says his companions also saved the mission. Can she join? He says yes. Everyone is an honored guest tonight, so they can go together. He turns and walks away, while the protagonist asks Urnil about backstab. Urnil explains that he's a bit overwhelmed with everything that happened, the crowd already staring, so he went to rest. Caleb realizes that tonight it's just the two of them, and he already invites her to the banquet, guys. She celebrates all cute. I even feel bad making jokes. They're already arriving at the party, with the protagonist saying that this Bottega mansion is incredible. The guard, however, blocks the two, wanting to know how they got there. The protagonist says, right, that they were invited to the party. The guy apologizes for stopping them and says he thought they were students looking for a guard. That's because, unlike the girl in the back who's in a dress, the guy is in regular clothes. He asks to see the document, and Urnil comes all excited to show her little document for the first time. He takes a look, Caleb and Urnil, sends a magical message there and says they can enter now. That piano playing and the nobles all in those furry clothes. Caleb says he's there for two reasons. First, he wants to observe the mages and understand high society from the inside. And, obviously, he also wants the reward for saving Abyssin. Besides, there's a certain mage he needs to investigate. Professor Ember, from the Magic University. That's because, at the moment he told Meldini he was one of the possessed, this guy gave a weird laugh, and he'll always remember that bastard and understand what that was about. Yeah, a little smile. The kid caught you in the act. Then someone calls for Caleb. It's Clarence bringing the rest of the family, saying he didn't see the kid had arrived. The protagonist says the guy at the door sent a magical message, so he thought everyone would have heard. Wow. The protagonist even questioned him. Clarence ignores it, tells Abyssin to say hi to the person who saved him. The guy's in a wheelchair. No way he was in a wheelchair in the dungeon too. The kid really wants to live the adventurer's life. He's there thanking the protagonist, saying he did this, did that, revived backstab, because of his ability. Caleb is, you know, a bit embarrassed there, not knowing what to say. Also asks how the pain is, because he said he used a pain relief spell, so he's fine. Besides, he's receiving regenerative healing at the temple, so soon he'll be up. The mother is there thanking too, saying it's thanks to him that her son is there. She hopes her son gets along well with Caleb. The protagonist says, of course, they'll be friends. He doesn't know anyone from the school yet. Besides, he also wanted to take a look at the mansion. The mother says it's okay and tells Abyssin to guide him. The two go, while the protagonist thanks and tells them to be careful with anything. It seems the protagonist has a certain plan, and understanding the mansion's layout is essential. They're in an elevator, and the protagonist is in shock. An elevator in a mansion is really a rich thing. Caleb is there smiling, saying that with one tour he already understood everything. Probably. Urnil also knows the paths, and now the right moment has arrived. They came across Meldini talking to Ember. They enter, and Meldini says the great talents of the university have arrived. Poor Abyssin, a bit embarrassed, says, like, he's not all that? It's not that much, right? To which the professor responds that he's still in the first year. He has plenty of time to become a great mage. He asks if Ember doesn't agree, who says maybe. Wow, this one isn't very positive. He's more curious to know if, after his departure, the kid found a resurrection scroll at the perfect moment. Can that really be called a skill or something else, right? The kid should explain better. Caleb already imagined this guy would think that. Apparently, the information that he received that treasure there is being kept secret. That's because, if they find out he has a legendary item with him and he's not that strong yet, they might want to steal it. Only one person knows about this, and that's why his answer is, I got lucky. That's it. Meldini, on the other hand, is there smiling, saying it's all thanks to him. Ember seems to notice something wrong and says the kid wants to keep secrets. The old man laughs and says it's okay. There's no mage without some secrets, at least. However, the stubborn one says he still has one more question. How did he conjure the thunderstorm to defeat the caretaker? Caleb says it's simple. He combined 3 first-tier spells. The guy says no way. A triple combination is something very unusual. Not to mention there's a practicality in using a spell that way. It's not something you can simply ignore using logic. By chance, did the kid have any special information? The protagonist says no, he just got lucky. Yeah, that's not helping the guy like you either, right? And Ember, obviously, is starting to get angry. He knows fusion isn't something you can achieve just by luck. So why does it seem like Meldini isn't questioning the kid about it? There's something very strange. He's sure Caleb isn't possessed. Another option would be that he used the knowledge of someone else who is possessed to achieve it. The most common suspect would be a certain Lien Angoyo, who was his former companion there, whom he killed, right? Before the protagonist took over the body. Then he says, Caleb, just one more question. Are you going to keep relying on luck from now on? The protagonist says, yes, I'll keep being lucky. Ember reacts, then gives a little laugh, saying he understands. Then he turns around, saying goodbye, saying he has things to resolve. The protagonist seems to like this. Did this guy fall into the trap he wanted? I don't know what it was, but that's what he says. The protagonist is laughing because he beat that game on the hardest difficulty and even on developer difficulty. He was in the Hall of Fame and knows how to monopolize all the information other possessed shouldn't have. I get it, right? Like, he's the possessed of the possessed. And unfortunately for Ember, he has much more information with him, and he knows he didn't come alone to this party. At that moment, the hourglass is activated. Wow, the protagonist gives the order for Urnil to attack the guy. At the same time, he tells her to pass on the information of who she finds and what she discussed. And then the turn ends. I didn't understand anything. The night passed. Someone knocks on the door saying they brought important information. The person inside responds, I thought you weren't interested in socializing at this party. Because Ember responds, it's about Caleb. That guy must know more than we imagine. I think it was for Urnil to track, right? Not to attack, like listening to everything he's saying. And Ember is there saying, probably, he has some relation with the Yoho tribe, and he must be a possessed of a difficulty above ours. All the knowledge of a veteran seems to be in Caleb's hands. However, I still feel there's something that hasn't been revealed. Like, for example, the places to find soul preservation and the secret treasures. The one inside says it's interesting to know that because Ember says yes, it's interesting too, but they need to be very careful. The unknown wants to know if he wants to reveal soon, then, that the kid is possessed because Ember says no, he seems close to Meldini. That would be risky at this moment. They'll need a meeting with the people up there because if they take too long, the black dog might approach Caleb. Oh my god, I've never seen a story with so many characters. Right, guys? Worse yet, they're characters that, like, you can remember and are memorable, There are works with many characters, but you don't care about anyone. And in the next chapter, Caleb found out about the black dog thing. Urnil apologizes, saying she knows it's wrong to eavesdrop on others' conversations, but they were talking about him, and she got curious. Yeah, the rascal says it's okay, who thinks it wasn't him who ordered it, right? However, now he's curious. Black Dog? He's never even heard of that thing in the game. It seems like it's a criminal group, but why does Ember seem so scared of them? Could there be another possessed person around here? One thing is certain, the relationship between the magical university and these guys isn't very good. He'll have to investigate that too. Just then, someone steps forward to greet everyone. It appears to be the king, who says they're there to celebrate the safety of his son Abison and to thank everyone present. That's Edward Burton, head of the Burton house, commenting on the adventurers who rescued Abison. The incredible mage Caleb and the sharpshooter Urnil, as a gesture of gratitude, I've prepared a special reward, so come see me after the party. Additionally, for today, we prepared a game called The Lost Message in the Maze, a game that requires not only magic but also wisdom. Using message transmission magic, the game is played in groups of 3. The first team to find the escape, scroll, and get out of this place wins. Each participant will choose a class and follow their missions. When they encounter a certain situation, they'll have 60 seconds to discuss, then put the solution in the message and send it. The result will be based on the logic of your solution to the presented problem, and the outcome can range from great success to great failure. An obvious strategy would be, for example, a warrior going after a goblin, and a bad strategy would be a priest doing the same. And to make it more fun, there's money involved, and you can win up to 5 times what you spend. The rest of the donations will be given as scholarships to the university. He asks if they have any more questions, and Caleb says he wants to bet the reward he's going to receive. Edward says that's fine. He'll allow this bet only for the 2 of them, and now it's time for them to form their teams. He'll give Caleb and Urnil the chance to be the first to choose a teammate. The protagonist thanks him but immediately chooses Urnil, obviously. Edward is surprised that he chose a newcomer and asks if Urnil accepts, and the eager-eared one says yes. However, he warns Caleb, there are people here with much more status, won't you regret it? Caleb seems to say he prefers Urnil since everyone is a mage. Edward laughs and says it's hard to be smarter than the boy, but everyone is a bit impressed, and then he asks who the next person he chooses is. And Caleb, king of them all, right, guy? He already called the elf girl. Now he calls a little girl, Annelle Soberton. She's the eldest daughter of the Burton house and a tier 5 mage. And it seems Abison mentioned she was the owner of that room where Urnil was listening to everything. He knows this girl has been talented since childhood, so she's not possessed, which gives the protagonist a good chance to find out why she's so involved with Ember. What Caleb didn't imagine is that the whole party is now cursing him because everyone wanted to team up with the cunning one. Isel then says she's not interested in this party game, but she wants to see who the so-called genius mage is, so it's the perfect chance. Everyone in this family has those droopy, closed eyes, right? I'm thinking they're planting other things in that garden. Edward then says there's only one exit scroll and wishes them good luck. With that, the trio is on the track, with Urnil as the rogue, Isel as the cleric, and our little mage boy. The protagonist comments that the illusion magic of the maze was really realistic. Urnil already reveals that she can't hear anyone nearby. The protagonist is sure they're using some sound suppression to hide their positions. She feels a bit sad, saying that if that's the case, she won't be useful at all. They were at a disadvantage now, that's for sure. But Isel says she also used suppression magic, and now she's going to use writing magic. Apparently, that's to transcribe things you say into text. Caleb is telling them to move forward, but she says to wait. Each of them only has 5 messages, meaning 15 in total. It's better to go slowly while the other teams use theirs. Caleb responds that that's exactly why they need to move faster. All the other teams will be thinking the same as her. Their best chance is to run as fast as possible and finish this event early, finding the shortest path to the scroll. Then Isel, with her tired face, says it makes sense, but she disagrees. Caleb realizes that, as always, every mage is cautious and unnecessarily fearful. He then says, let's decide by vote. What do you think, Urnil? She's a bit embarrassed, but obviously agrees with Caleb. Isel says, all right, let's go then, right? I don't even care about winning or losing this. But inside, she's thinking, I heard this boy was smart. Apparently, the rumors are quite exaggerated. The scene changes, they're advancing, and there are a bunch of people lying on the ground. The protagonist warns that they're going to use the first message now. Isel, once again, objects, wanting to know what he thinks he's doing. The event hasn't even started. He explains that, as she can see, there was a battle on the ground, and everyone is without their armor. It probably wasn't goblins, since the bodies weren't mutilated. Bandits would have taken the weapons too, so it doesn't make sense for only the armor to be missing. There's only one creature that has the habit of stealing blood-soaked clothing, and those are banshees, which means they need to disguise themselves immediately. At that moment, he simulates that the team's mage would change their appearance with an ability to look like children until they pass through the banshee's territory. That's because banshees, you know, don't touch children. And there they are, all cute, little, big-headed kids running around. What a mess was that? Isel is a bit confused, wanting to know what this banshee tear thing is. The item, when thrown at the enemy, releases a banshee scream to scare them. The scene shifts to what seems like a volcano nearby, and obviously, they're feeling the temperature rise. It could be a magma forge or a mud elemental. Then Isel says it could also be a fire giant, but he says no way, the area is too small for that kind of creature. Besides, you can see marks on the ground from some creature that was eating metal. Caleb then says to send the message that at this moment they're going to throw explosives without lighting them. Urnil wants to use them, but he says, no, it's for Isel to do it. She says all right then and activates it. The message responds with great success. You lured the Metal Eater into eating an explosive, causing it to detonate, and you also obtained a knight's long sword. The protagonist is already rushing ahead, saying they can't stop, while Isel wants to know why he's so reckless. As far as she heard, Ember, in theory, has an absurd amount of knowledge about the possessed. However, this kid was on a completely different level. No other possessed could be doing this. A bit further ahead, the protagonist stops and says that now that they've passed that region, they can catch their breath. But then he asks, Isel, do you happen to know anything about the possessed from another world? The poor thing is startled, her droopy eyes wide open. What possessed? What are you talking about? But the boy hits the nail on the head and says, I'm talking about people like, for example, Professor Enver. At that moment, she has a mini heart attack. How does he know about her connection with this guy? Could he have overheard her conversation with him before the game? But if he had used some magic to listen, she would have noticed. However, Isel isn't dumb either, and she remembers Urnil saying, oh, I won't be able to help if I can't use my hearing. At that moment, she realizes so that Elf must have the sound map, and that's why he kept her around. But it's strange, that conversation happened randomly at a 5-hour party. It would only make sense if from the beginning, he was already doubting Ember. If that's the case, it means he didn't find out today. So when did he find out? Caleb tells her to calm down and says he has no intention of hurting any possessed, he just wants to talk to her. He wants her to explain about this so-called possessed conference that the professor is trying to create. She says she doesn't know much about the details, while realizing there's no way she can deny anything now. The best thing at this moment is to play dumb, pretending not to have much information. She then says, that meeting is in a secret club at the university, and obviously the possessed hide their identities, right? So it's really hard for me to have information. Caleb already asks, wait a minute, you're not possessed, so why are you in this club? She, a bit embarrassed, says it's because she's trying to learn some specific spells. Caleb connects the dots and now understands how Isel got so strong. The club, which needed protection, used the Ember family as support, and at the same time, the Ember family gave Isel access to evolve faster. He then says, wait a minute, but you're a tier 5 mage. Why are you still in this club? The poor thing is out of excuses and says she can't talk about that. She'll tell him anything he wants, except that, even if it's money, the protagonist interrupts and says he already has plenty of money. I'm from the east. I heard you're working in that region. If you can investigate some friends of mine from that area, I'll let it go. You won't need to give me any information. The poor thing agrees, a bit awkwardly, and he decides to give a reward. And he asks them, do you want me to try to guess why you're associating with Ember's club? Probably because you want to go deeper into the maze, right? She's a bit confused, and he says it's obvious when she's trying to learn spellbinding, a method that's useless for a tier 5 mage. She must already have countless spells, and at this moment, the only thing the club offers her is deep knowledge. So how about joining him? After all, the knowledge he possesses is something no one in that club should know. He won't force her into anything, but this conversation will remain a secret. Her monarch vibe is gone, right? Now she's all sweaty, with her wand trembling. While Urnil is more curious, wanting to know if they really have that much money to be denying. A while later, she's now a bit embarrassed with the hatred of this event. That's because a card appeared about a blessing falling upon her. She was overcome with emotion and will have to sing and dance for the group for 3 minutes. Since there's a penalty, the protagonist says there's no way she can refuse. They'll have fun watching this. She asks if it's really necessary, and he says of course, because there's a penalty. With that, trembling, she starts to sing. My lord, grant me a pure body and soul, looking like a stiff outfit. The protagonist is dismayed by the girl's lack of talent. He then tells her not to feel so bad. It wasn't that horrible. It wasn't the worst thing he's ever seen in his entire life. But apparently, they survived without the penalty because they finally reached the scroll. Urnil, seeing the altar, says that's probably where the game ends. And Isel says yes. Now they just need to send the escape message and it's over. When suddenly, someone nearby says it's incredible. Damn Meldini appears, saying he's been following them. It's amazing how everything was perfectly resolved. He imagined it would be an incredible performance, so he even brought Professor Ember to watch with him. Caleb knows that help is nonsense. These guys were measuring how much he knows about the possessed. He then says, well, now let's grab the scroll and everyone leave, right? Meldini says that's one of the options, but how about a match between them? A game is a game, and this can be like a kind of lesson. Regardless of the outcome, they'll keep the prize. Look at the elf girl there, with her droopy eyes and ears. Caleb, in that moment, says no. The game must be appreciated in the right way. Whoever wins gets the prize. But we should know the rules, right? No direct attacks. They can only use the transmission messages. With that, Meldini says to start, and the protagonist says yes, already telling Urnil to run to the altar, which she does immediately. The elf girl with the ears is going to use a flame explosion, but the protagonist uses silence on Professor Haley just in time. Wow, if she's a teacher, then I'm Harry Potter. Poor thing can't use magic for 30 seconds, and right away, Meldini charges in with a heavy attack. Isel activates a guardian shield, and the attack is blocked. Actually, no, she fails. Her shield is destroyed, and she's stunned, unable to move for 10 seconds. She falls to the ground, saying it'll take a while. Meldini smiles and says that should be enough. So, what is the boy going to do now? Wow, the protagonist, that's right, activates the hourglass. He thinks to himself, well, according to the class order in this game, if Haley is the mage, Meldini is the barbarian. Ember didn't attack, so he's probably protecting the allies. And in this position, where he's just watching without using any buffs, he's probably a priest. Suddenly, the protagonist activates 3 message transfers and tells Urnil to send a message when she sees the scroll, though he doesn't know what message. Meanwhile, there are already 2 spears in Meldini's chest, who realizes the guy used the no-casting ultra-fast, whatever that is, and asks Ember to revive him. He pulls out the Phoenix Rebirth, but the protagonist throws a Banshee's Tear and screams in his face, stunning him. With that, he's stuck for 20 seconds. Dude, stuns in this world last long. Huh? 20 seconds is enough to make tea, and then still take the guy down. Meanwhile, Urnil is face to face with a scroll, sends the transfer message, but Haley says she won't allow it and uses a quick target summoning spell. It seems to have worked because the scroll goes to Haley's hand immediately, and she smiles, saying they fought well, but now the game is over. Oh, man, but the scroll turns into a sword. Great success. You were fooled by Caleb's illusion. The great sword was disguised as a scroll. Haley turns around confused, and the protagonist smiles, saying it's a shame the real one hadn't even been summoned. He tells Urnil to finish the game, and she activates the message transmission. Yeah, he taught the teachers a lesson. Poor things. They couldn't beat the boys' Ultra Quadra cast. In the hall, everyone's congratulating him, and the protagonist thanks them. Meldini and Ember are leaving, saying they'll see him at the academy. Someone says he was amazing. It's Abison praising him, saying he never even managed to finish it. When he's better and can get out of the chair, he wants to play with Caleb too. The protagonist asks if he was ever part of this, and he says yes, his father made him practice before he could enter the labyrinth. The protagonist realizes this guy is really spoiled, using something expensive and complex like this as a training method. Then Clarence says it might seem exaggerated, but his family has a reason to care so much for Abison. 12 years ago, when the labyrinth eruption happened, the Burton family wasn't spared either. Countless relatives died, countless funerals took place, and everyone was consumed by sadness. At a time when no one could escape the darkness, the only person smiling was 6-year-old Abison, probably because he didn't understand death, but thanks to him and that, the family managed to recover. The sadness didn't completely disappear, but the idea of losing someone they love became unacceptable. That's why saving and preparing Abison is no different from saving the entire family. And he thanks Caleb once again, who must be the father, coming from behind saying he doesn't need to say anything more. They just need to give the boy his prize and show gratitude. They call him to another place, and there in the room, he says that for both of them, there's no reward that will be enough. However, offering something too valuable to a group that will be on the first floors of the labyrinth can be dangerous. That's why he chose something that is both useful and doesn't put them at risk. Good excuse to give a bad gift, right? Sneaky. You give someone a bad Christmas present and say, I was going to give you a Mercedes, but then you get robbed, right? So to keep you safe, I gave you a Hot Wheels. Urnil is thanking them, while the protagonist looks down and says this was expected from the Burton family. Everything had already been officially analyzed by the University of Magic, a transcription ring for the skill transcription in the Book of Memory, but it doesn't use a magic slot. This ring allows you to copy anything written. Does this mean creating a duplication scroll is possible? Interesting. Didn't quite get it, right? Well, let's see. Urnil is there, all excited, asking if it's really hers and already puts it on, thanking them. It's a crossbow wrist guard, granting the sentinel relocation ability. When operating a crossbow, you can shoot magic arrows. That seems pretty good and simple, right? The protagonist thanks them, saying they'll make the best use of it. Wow, the guy also handed over a check for 200,000 gold. It's not as valuable as the items, but it should help. Now, Urnil already took it out of his hand, wanting to know how much this little glove is worth. Caleb decides not to comment, because it's enough to make an ordinary person faint. Bernard, however, doesn't stop, says there's more to give the boy. Feeling full of himself, oh, my handshake is the most valuable thing in town. If any problem arises, don't hesitate to talk to me. I want to see then. I'll call in that favor when a little problem shows up, because as the protagonist, he's going to have problems. The first problem already appears as soon as he leaves the room. It's Izel leaning against the wall, wanting likes on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I am out.